This young man was known as a hero who saved the whole world from the Demon King, the one who had plunged this place into a sea of blood. However, at the moment Aiden Albarel finished off the Demon King, he was unexpectedly hit by a monstrous curse. Supposedly at this time, Aiden's comrades should have been diligently helping him, but reality was completely the opposite. Those whom Aiden considered comrades were either extremely indifferent or mocked Aiden, because they all knew well about this curse, that the one who eradicates sin would also become a sinner, but absolutely no one warned Aiden. Needless to say, Aiden was incredibly furious at this moment. However, he was currently sealed. His soul felt like it had plummeted into a bottomless, colossal ocean. Damn it, Aiden would rather die than be imprisoned here forever. But it seemed heaven had eyes. Aiden could once again open his eyes. When he woke up, he was still grinding his teeth, saying he would definitely not let those damn dogs rest in peace. The two men attending Aiden's bedside were overjoyed to see this. Has he awakened? It seems so. Young master, have you awakened? The words young master and master kept ringing in his ears, making him not understand anything at all. Aiden found the voices of these two people strangely unfamiliar. He didn't know what they were saying, and where was he? He only felt his lips were parched. Right at this moment, a middle-aged couple rushed over. It seemed both belonged to the noble class, so they maintained their appearance quite well, especially the crying woman who looked very young. "My dear, are you awake?" "Our son is truly awake, thank God," the husband beside her added. Aiden found his vision gradually clearing, but his ears were ringing. "Son, what the hell is happening?" He used all his remaining strength to sit up, scanned the unfamiliar faces, and then asked, "Who are you people?" The blonde woman continued to cry her eyes out. "Oh God, you've been unconscious for 2 whole days. You must have lost your memory. I am your mother, my beloved son, Aiden Remis." Aiden felt something was not quite right. Since when did his surname change from Albarel to Remis? This situation was truly confusing. He momentarily felt overwhelmed with information. Is this a hallucination before death, or something similar to it? Aiden didn't know. He only knew his head suddenly throbbed as if hit by a hammer. The woman became even more worried seeing her son in discomfort. But in reality, Aiden was fine. He only had a headache because many memories that didn't belong to him suddenly appeared in his head. Those were the memories of the person named Aiden Remis. Based on the information he just obtained, Aiden determined that this was the year 450 according to the royal calendar. It also meant this was 15 years before. He was betrayed and sealed into the void. Aiden was sure he had died back then, even before he could become the new Demon King. However, now it seemed he had been just revived in a different body. Thinking of those who had betrayed him before, Aiden couldn't help but show an extremely terrifying expression. This expression of his made the two servants beside him tremble uncontrollably. Seeing them so scared, Aiden realized how terrible the previous owner of this body was. Bullying the weak, harassing innocent girls, torturing servants. There was nothing he hadn't done. It was good to be alive again. But why did he have to be reborn into the body of such a scumbag? If he weren't the Duke's son, he would have been beaten, crippled long ago. After fully regaining his senses and being able to stand up, the first thing Aiden did was look in the mirror. Even though he had accepted the fact that he had been reborn, when he looked at the unfamiliar face, Aiden still felt this wasn't real at all. Was he really once Aiden Albarel, the one who defeated the Demon King? Or was the entire previous life just a long dream during his 2-day coma? Thinking of this, Aiden suddenly had an idea. Why not test his own strength system open, Aiden commanded. Immediately, a simulated panel appeared in front of him. Though it was right before his eyes, he couldn't touch it. On it was Aiden's information. The surname part was left with 3 question marks perhaps, because the system couldn't determine if he currently bore the surname Albarel or Remis. Titles like Mercenary, King, Sorcerer's Scythe, or Enemy of Talos were no longer available. The system announced that these titles would be unlocked sequentially when he met the necessary conditions. Speaking of which, this system was a power Aiden possessed after eating the heart of a madman in his previous life. The system was still there, proving his previous life wasn't a dream. It's just that his title should have been Dragon Slayer. Now, not only had he lost his old title, but even his name was Aiden question mark. It was truly depressing. But Aiden quickly pulled himself together. Even if the previous owner of this body was a scoundrel or a good-for-nothing, the fact that he was revived was already a gift from the gods. Thinking of this, Aiden was so happy he burst out laughing. He really had a chance to find those who betrayed him and tear them limb from limb. Because he was too happy, Aiden failed to control his expression. His distorted smile was extremely terrifying. Making the servant who was bringing in tea freeze on the spot, Aiden pretended not to see him trembling violently and asked, "What's the matter?" "Ah, I just brought you something to drink, sir." "Oh, perfect timing, I'm thirsty." Aiden put on the most industrially friendly smile possible, not forgetting to say thank you when he took the teacup. However, this reaction of his made the servant even more scared. It must be said if it were the previous Aden Remis, he would never have uttered a proper thank you. Instead, there would probably be a dozen cruel tortures for the servants. The servant guessed it would be similar this time, just not knowing what trick the young master would play. However, this time, Aiden just slowly savored the tea, then mumbled, "Delicious," without any other movement. "What's this?" the servant thought to himself. "Is that all? Does that brat really want to thank me? Does he really like that tea that much?" A series of thoughts swirled in this man's mind, making his brain feel like it was about to explode. Aiden saw that the other person had finished his task but hadn't left yet, so he turned around and asked curiously, "Is there anything else?" "Ah, no." The man just snapped back to reality then. "Nothing else, sir." After saying that, he maintained his ghost-like expression and walked out of the young master's room. Another servant was already waiting outside and was very surprised to see his friend come out safely. He was even more surprised to hear him say that Aiden had just said thank you. It seems after the young master was in a deep coma for 2 days, his mind hasn't fully recovered, or he's gone completely mad. The mood of those servants was very complicated, but Aiden didn't have time to care about them. His current situation was indeed very crazy, as he had been reincarnated, returning 15 years to the past in a different body. So, what happened to the Aden Albarel of the past? Did the past him become a separate entity from the present him? If so, then Aden Albarel must have become self-reliant by now, no longer needing the support of his master, Van Khan, the former mercenary king. The more Aiden thought, the more curious he became, determined to get to the bottom of this. He eagerly rushed out of the room, calling out the name of the servant from before. "Hey, Philip." Philip was the name of the young man who had just served the tea. "Yes, young master." He jumped startled and turned around. The reason he was startled was because Aiden had never called him by his name. "I have a question for you." Aiden flashed a beauty pageant-friendly smile, wanting to get some information from this person. But from Philip's perspective, Aiden's smile now was no different from a demon from hell. He had barely calmed down after that "thank you," and now his whole body started trembling uncontrollably again. The other person also guessed what Aiden was about to do, so he patted Philip's shoulder a few times and whispered his thanks. "Thanks for everything. Philip, we will remember you." Philip really wanted to cry his eyes out, not knowing what he had done wrong for the young master to want to torture him to this extent. But when he entered the room, he realized he had worried for nothing. Aiden didn't intend to do anything. He just wanted to ask about the mercenary king and his disciple, because in his previous life he was the most famous disciple of the mercenary king Vankan. Just like the flow of history from his previous life, Philip replied that Vankan had recently gone missing. It's just that a piece of different information was given right after. Philip asserted that he had never heard of Vankan having a disciple. Aiden was stunned for a few seconds. What did he mean, no disciple? Then, what was the him of the previous life doing? Or did he really no longer exist? Aiden still remembered vividly the first time he met his master. In his previous life, when he was a child, he was a pickpocket. And on one occasion when he boldly pickpocketed Vankan, Aiden was caught by him. It was also on that occasion that Vankan recognized the potential of this street urchin, and took Aiden as his disciple. At that time, he had promised to train him to become the most skilled mercenary, and he truly did it. The name Alden Albarel quickly rose to prominence as the best disciple of Master Vancon. Later, after slaughtering the raging dragon, that title became Dragon Slayer, as everyone often called him. But now Philip, with an expression that showed no hint of lying, declared that he had never heard of the mercenary king having a disciple. This also meant that the him of the previous life, Aiden Albarel, had vanished from this world. This was truly a very difficult thing for him to accept. So for the next few consecutive days, Aiden just stayed in his room. After a few days, the servants in the mansion began to whisper that after 2 days of coma, the young master had completely changed his personality. Even if Philip spilled wine, he wouldn't curse or break things. And he often thanked the servants, and he called them by their names, very friendly, instead of pointing fingers and calling names like before. They all believe that people undergo significant personality changes after a serious illness. And Aiden was the same. But seeing his listless appearance these past few days, they couldn't help but worry about him. But in fact, Aiden had calmed down long ago. That dazed face and those empty eyes were just an expression of his extreme boredom. After becoming the Duke's son, he was idle to the point of frustration. Food was already prepared, and there was no need to clean up after eating. These few days during his free time, he searched for information about Aiden Albarel, but it was true that the him of the previous life no longer existed. This made Aiden very troubled. His Dragon Slayer identity had completely disappeared from this world. So, what about the feeling of betrayal? What about his indignation? And what about his plan for revenge? They hadn't touched him at all in this life. But wasn't the heavens giving him a chance to be reborn for revenge? Absorbed in thought, Aiden suddenly heard the sound of wooden swords clashing. It seemed the knights in the castle were training. There were many knights in this duchy, so seeing this scene was not strange at all. "Why are you here?" An annoyed voice rang out, interrupting Aiden's vague thoughts. Cars in front of Aiden was an arrogant young man. He was his younger brother in this life, Cars Remus. Unlike the scumbag previous owner of this body, Cars was a very hard-working young man. He was always diligent and had already become a knight. And even though he was only a younger son, Cars was specially granted the right to compete for the inheritance. If this young man had any problem, it was only one thing: he was always disrespectful to his older brother, just like now. But it was understandable because his older brother was a complete loser, only knowing how to drink and fool around all day. Aiden pretended not to see Cars's contemptuous expression, but he didn't even hesitate to scold his older brother to his face. "Why are you here? Why don't you go out there and continue drinking?" Aiden didn't argue with a child and replied, "I'm just sitting around because I'm too bored. The knight's training isn't much of a beautiful sight to behold. If you're not planning to spar, then hurry up and leave." Cars shooed Aiden away as if shooing away a pest. But his words suddenly awakened Aiden. "Now that you mention it, since that incident, it seems he hasn't even picked up a sword." And so Aiden made a decision that even his younger brother wouldn't have expected. He would spar. Entering the arena, all the knights present had to be respectful to Aiden. His first opponent was the apprentice knight Bazan. Watching him perform salutations for half a day made him bored. He just wanted to fight quickly to test his feelings. But the people around him were restless. They didn't know if they should stop Bazan because the opponent was, after all, the eldest young master of this mansion. But most others thought nothing major would happen. Because Bazan didn't want to be kicked out of here, he would surely intentionally lose. Bazan's mood at this moment wasn't much better than others. In fact, he felt very awkward being forced to fight this rogue young master. In their eyes, Aiden was a weakling who couldn't even tie up a chicken. Even if they fought him with their eyes closed, they could win. But if Aiden lost, he would definitely fly into a rage and torture them. So Bazan was racking his brains trying to figure out how to intentionally lose without being too obvious to satisfy Aiden's vanity, completely unaware that Aiden was now a completely different person. Aiden, based on his opponent's expression, also guessed he was thinking of yielding, and he certainly didn't want that to happen. To warm up a bit in this new body, Aiden planned to go all out and provoke his opponent a little. Don't intentionally lose, just do your best, Aiden said, as he raised his sword. An apprentice knight losing to a weak rogue like me would be quite useless, don't you think? Bazan was extremely surprised, not expecting the young master to say these words himself. He was even more astonished when Aiden declared that if he lost, Aiden himself would kick him out of the family's knight ranks. The observers beside them couldn't help but gulp nervously due to the tension. Kars, on the other hand, thought his rogue older brother had really lost his mind. He had never held a sword before, and yet wanted to seriously fight a guard. Kars widened his eyes, wanting to witness Aiden being shamefully knocked out by Bazan. On this side, Bazan had also begun his first movements. Although he was only an apprentice knight, his speed was still quite fast. On the opposite side, Aiden also confidently countered this first attack. Although his experience was abundant, what Aiden didn't expect was that this body was too weak. However, perhaps because of the excitement of being revived, Aiden still wanted to fight a little longer. And so he lifted the heavy wooden sword again and sparred with Bazan for a few dozen more rounds. The opponent was increasingly putting all his strength into the fight, almost forgetting the master-servant relationship between them. The knights observing from the outside became very tense. They silently cursed Bazan as a fool for actually using all his strength to fight the young master. If he accidentally injured Aiden, he would be done for, but it seemed they were worrying a bit too much. Because looking closely at the situation, it was Bazan who was now busy deflecting blows. Meanwhile, Aiden was the one holding the initiative to attack. Even Kars had noticed this and found it very perplexing. In the match, Bazan had started to tire. He had indeed used all his strength, but still couldn't defeat his opponent. This seemed a bit unexpected because young Master Aiden was supposed to be a weakling who couldn't even tie up a chicken. Moreover, Bazan's sword hadn't landed a single hit so far. To say Aiden was lucky would be too absurd. After taking a few seconds to catch his breath, Bazan attacked again. But Aiden had gradually gotten used to this body. Each time he struck, he felt very refreshed. The more they fought, the more Aiden's passionate blood boiled. A long, unfelt excitement was surging, and Bazan was thus gradually pushed back by Aiden. Kars couldn't accept this situation, where the older brother he always considered a useless rogue was actually superior to an apprentice knight. Moreover, his swordsmanship was incredibly skilled, as if he had been hiding it all this time and it was now unleashed. Bazan was the one who could feel it most clearly, and he truly wondered where Aiden had learned that swordsmanship. As for Aiden, to be more precise, he was enjoying this sparring match. After a period of living lazily in his new body, he seemed to have forgotten one thing, that even though this body was weak and had no muscle, deep down, that soul still belonged to Adin Albarel the Dragon Slayer, who had defeated the Raging Dragon. After struggling to dodge for a while, Bazan revealed irreparable openings. Aiden, on the other hand, took full advantage of those to secure victory for himself. Even when he had won, the other knights were still wide-eyed in astonishment, unable to believe that Aden could win, even though Bazan didn't yield. "Thank you very much, Kars. That sparring match just now was really refreshing," Aiden said, looking towards his younger brother. Kars didn't think his sarcastic remarks would become an assist for Aiden to showcase a talent he had never revealed before. His face clearly showed an unsightly expression. "Hearing you say that, I'm so happy." Aiden knew Kars wasn't really happy for him, but he didn't bother to care, because today's match was really satisfying, just a bit tiring. Before leaving, Aiden also promised that he would visit here more often to test his strength. Until Aiden's figure disappeared, Kars still maintained his skeptical expression. "Is he really the scumbag? Young master I once knew, I'm wondering about that too?" The knight beside him thought to himself. The reason Aden returned so quickly was because his body had reached its limit. It was truly embarrassing to admit that this new body of his couldn't even withstand a single match. Aiden's whole body was now trembling uncontrollably from muscle fatigue. But he felt strangely comfortable inside, and the resentment in his heart had also lessened considerably. Aiden began to feel that this life was a new opportunity for him, Speaking of revenge, it was true that heaven had revived him to do that. But his enemies were too talented, so much so that calling each of them a one-man army was no exaggeration. Adding the fact that they all had high-status revenge became even more difficult. Typically, one could mention the Night King and the successor to Grand Duke Sias Sinbada, the iron-blooded Holy Church's chosen executioner Spica, the talented Grand Sorcerer Sora, and finally, the second in command of the Immortal Empire, also a great alchemist Kansas. All of them had incredibly formidable profiles, and the truth was Aiden currently couldn't defeat any of them. It seemed like revenge had to be a long-term plan, as to be able to take revenge, he needed to wipe them all out before they could form an alliance. And if those people joined forces now, this kingdom would go through the most difficult period in its history. He needed to finish his revenge before the alliance against dark mages was formed in the next 5 years. And to be able to do that, the first thing Auden had to do was tear apart and repair this useless body. If he continued in this weak state, he couldn't even defeat a single goblin, let alone those people. So the question was, how to improve his health? Aiden racked his brains all night, and the next morning he listed a list and gave it to Philip. After reading the paper, he once again showed his trembling like a leaf appearance. Do you really need these things? Young master, you were quite secretive before, but what are you planning now? Huh, is there a problem with what I requested? A big question mark appeared above Aiden's head. Inside that paper was a series of expensive ingredients. But Philip didn't pay attention to that because Duke Remus was stinking rich. He just paid attention to 4 things: grass grown from buffalo dung hellflower, despair flower, and madness flower. These were all highly toxic medicinal herbs, which was why he was trembling to this extent. Aiden sighed deeply. He felt that even if he sincerely explained why he needed these ingredients, they would still suspect him. So, although he didn't really want to, Aiden chose the most toxic solution, imitating the behavior of the previous owner of this body. He slowly approached, placed his hand on Philip's restless shoulder, and then flashed a dangerously scented smile. Knowing what they're used for is also quite dangerous. Are you willing to pay the price to know the truth? If I tell you what they're used for, will you play with me? Just imagining it is fun. I've been a bit quiet lately, so you're a little bored, right? Should we go back to the old days, huh, Philip? This method of Auden's really worked. Philip was so scared he almost pooped his pants. He hurriedly replied, I have no objection, sir. I'll go buy them right away. After saying that, he ran off. Not even his shadow could be seen. Aiden felt a little guilty for scaring him like this, but he didn't have any other more effective way. He needed to use everything he could in this life, even if it meant doing things he had never done in his previous life. Anyway, heaven had reincarnated him into the body of a rich duke's son, so his life would be completely different from his previous life. As for his identity in the previous life, Aiden had also experienced a body that had surpassed the limits of a mortal. So even though he now possessed this useless body, he was still confident that he could reach the level of a master swordsman faster than anyone else. And a month and a half later, Aiden had indeed undergone significant changes. He not only became stronger, but his stamina also became much more resilient. Most of the week, Aiden spent training at the training ground. After sweating profusely, Philip was always on standby to offer mana potions for him to use. That was the method Aiden had come up with. He wanted to push his body to its limits through training, then recover it with this mana potion. One could colloquially call that method break and fix. It's just that doing this was a bit expensive, as just 1 bottle of this mana potion was equivalent to a commoner's monthly salary. Fortunately, he was reincarnated as a duke's son. Moreover, Aiden still had his own secret weapon. Thinking of this, he turned to ask Philip, Where are the things I requested? Yes, sir. They have just been delivered to your room, Philip replied. He actually really wanted to ask what Aiden would do with those ingredients. But Philip was also afraid Aiden would drag him back to those hellish old days, so he kept his mouth shut. Anyway, preserving his own little life was the most important thing. After Aiden finished training, he quickly returned to his room. Philip had truly proven himself useful by buying all the poisonous flowers Aiden needed. Actually, Aiden had never thought he would resort to this method, as it was the theory created by those scoundrels Kansas and Saura. Specifically, when the body is ravaged by poison and internal organs are corroded, the hidden potential within the body will erupt for survival. And Aiden had asked Philip to buy these poisonous herbs precisely to stuff them into his own mouth. In fact, he was also a little scared because he could easily die from these poisonous flowers. To prepare for that, Aiden had also bought a high-grade holy potion in case he couldn't bear it anymore. He would immediately drink it to detoxify. So after mustering all his courage, he stuffed the first hellflower into his mouth. The poison quickly eroded Aiden's body, forcing him to drink the entire holy potion immediately. This pain truly made one not want to live anymore. But after detoxification, the mana flow in his body indeed became much smoother. This proved that the theory from his previous life by those scoundrels actually worked. But there was still a large box of flowers beside him. Aiden wasn't sure if he had enough strength to repeat this process 100 more times. "Are you having fun, O Dragon Slayer King?" Suddenly, a voice rang in his ear, stunning Aiden, because it called him by a nickname that supposedly no one in this life should know. Moreover, that voice was also very familiar. Aiden was so tense he jumped to his feet shouting, "Where are you? How the hell are you here? Show yourself." Aiden reacted so violently that his whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. Philip, who had been on duty outside, heard this commotion and immediately opened the door and rushed in. He saw that his young master didn't seem to be doing well and was extremely worried. "Sir, what happened?" "Get out," Aiden just replied coldly. But Philip was still uneasy. "But I heard a loud noise just now." "Do I need to repeat myself a second time, Philip?" "Get out," Aiden growled, his eyes flashing, carrying a strong killing intent. Philip was so scared his face turned pale. He immediately retreated outside and closed the door. Now only Aiden was left in the room. He was sure he had heard that voice just now, and it wasn't a hallucination. The owner of that voice was the Lord of Hell. He knew Aiden's true identity was the Dragon Slayer King from his previous life. But why was he here? Just thinking about it made him so tense he trembled. "I've caught you, haven't I?" That voice rang out once more, echoing down from right above Aiden's head. "It's been a while, hasn't it, Dragon Slayer King, Aiden Albarel?" Aiden was extremely tense, looking around in all directions, but only hearing that voice, unable to locate its physical form. After hearing this voice for the second time, he was even more certain it was the Lord of Hell. Aiden's emotions immediately exploded. He roared, "You damn scoundrel, Lord of Hell, why are you here? I'm sure I saw you die right before my eyes. It seems you miss me a lot." That voice was full of sarcasm. "Unfortunately, I don't have a body, so you can't see me." Hearing this, Aiden heaved a sigh of relief. That was fine. If he had lost his body, at least the opponent couldn't threaten his life. But this made Aiden curious. If the Lord of Hell had lost his body, how could he be lurking around talking to him? But this made Aiden curious. If the Lord of Hell had lost his body, how could he be lurking around talking to him? "In the final moment you died when you transformed into the new Lord of Hell." That voice answered his doubt. After hearing this, Aiden unconsciously clenched his fists. "What do you mean? Does what you're saying mean I'm currently the Lord of Hell?" "Both right and wrong," the opponent replied. It explained that when it died, it had transferred its soul into Aiden's body. Actually, it had originally intended to take over his body and revive itself. But Aiden, in that endless abyss, ended his own life, ruining its plan. Then you were reincarnated, and the soul of the Lord of Hell, still existing within you, thus followed you to this place. Aiden nodded, indicating he understood. After thinking for a moment, he asked again, "Oh, so how can I destroy that soul? Should I pour holy water on myself?" Hearing him say this, the Lord of Hell started to panic. "Wait a minute, Dragon Slayer, listen to me. I'm very different from the me of the past." "Different how? In the end, you're still just an entity that enjoys madness and rebellion, right?" Aiden replied dejectedly, still not giving up the thought of how to destroy the Lord of Hell. "No, no. The madness and chaos you witnessed weren't mine. They were linked to the Demon King. That link was severed when you were sealed and trapped in the void, the opponent explained. Aiden was half believing, half doubting, but after some contemplation, he felt it was telling the truth. That explained why this guy seemed calmer than the Lord of Hell he knew before. Back then, he was completely insane, unable to even hold a normal conversation. However, in the Lord of Hell's recent words, Aiden had noticed a detail: the Demon King. According to the Lord of Hell, the Demon King was also an entity known as primordial evil, wicked from birth, someone even the gods had to be wary of and avoid. In the past, the Lord of Hell was cursed and had to do what that Demon King wanted. In other words, their powers were bound together as one, and that bond only officially ended when Aiden, the one cursed to become the new Demon King, ended his own life in the void. After listening to its nonsense for a while, Aiden could somewhat understand the issue here, so he asked one more question. Is this situation also part of your plan? What situation? The Lord of Hell asked back. Precisely the matter of returning 15 years to the past and being reincarnated into the body of this Aden Remis. Is this your doing? The opponent hummed and hawed for a long time. You could say that. When I entered your body, I tried to use dragon magic to turn back time, because dragons are entities created to be agents of the gods. Therefore, they can interfere with the laws of this world. Using your dragon magic is not an impossible feat. Aiden suddenly had to absorb too much information, so he was a bit overwhelmed. He asked further, then why didn't you use it to escape the void yourself instead of turning back time? Well, that's because suddenly, I'm too tired, I have to go rest. The Lord of Hell didn't answer, then disappeared without a trace. Aiden was suddenly ghosted and was very annoyed, but no matter how much he yelled, that voice didn't sound again. Just like that, a month passed. During this time, the Lord of Hell often surfaced to talk to Aiden. Having it in his body made him a bit uncomfortable, but at the same time, Aiden also felt comforted knowing someone remembered his past. Besides that, Aiden continued his training process relentlessly, and his body had progressed very quickly, to the point that all the scarecrows in the training yard could no longer withstand the forceer of the slashes from the sword in his hand. Today, while resting, Aiden accidentally saw the knights training right beside him. He looked from the scarecrows he had cut in half to those knights. A ruthless smile gradually appeared on his face. Excellent, they will become my new scarecrows. Dragon Slayer, you really suit the villain role better than being the main protagonist, the Lord of Hell commented. Shut up. Do you want me to drink the whole bottle of holy water? Aiden threatened, and the Lord of Hell immediately shut his mouth. This was what he had learned after a long process of training with poison, that every time Aiden drank holy water for healing the divine power within, it could hurt this guy because he was the source of evil. Now, just by holding up the bottle of holy water, the Lord of Hell was already terrified of him. Aiden again observed the knights on the other side, thinking about whom to pick for a sword fight. And suddenly, he saw a rather familiar face, though he wasn't sure if he had met him before. This apprentice knight's name was Lou. Currently, he was being heavily reprimanded by the instructor because he was lagging far behind the other apprentice knights. Lou had already tried very hard, but the truth was he still couldn't compare to the others. Therefore, when scolded, he could only grit his teeth, listen, and promise to try harder. But this name Lou almost made Aiden feel like he'd been slapped hard. Impossible. How could he not know this person? That was the Free Knight Lou. It's just that now he looked too different from his appearance in the previous life, so Aiden didn't recognize him. In his previous life, he had pretended to be a knight, while his true identity was a mercenary, hence the nickname Free Knight. And Aiden didn't think that in this life he would pretend to be a knight within his own family. In the previous life, Lou had a rather unpleasant personality, but he also couldn't deny that he had been indebted to him many times. In the entire duchy, there were only a few S-rank mercenaries, including him. Yet this Lou had sacrificed himself while exterminating a mad dragon with him. Meeting again this time, Aiden's mood was a bit complicated. He had originally thought he would meet Lou in hell, but he was still alive and well here, right in his family's mansion. He never expected that turning back time would give him such wonderful opportunities. Thinking of this, Aden immediately shouldered his sword and walked towards Lu, then called out loudly. Lu heard him, paused his training, and then turned towards him with a bewildered expression. "What is it? Are you calling me?" Aden immediately closed in, glaring at the opponent. "Did you just ask if I was calling you? Shouldn't you state your name and rank when the master speaks to you?" Lu was terrified, immediately stepped back 2 paces, then respectfully bowed according to the standards of a knight towards his master. "Forgive me, I am apprentice knight." "Lu, greetings, young Master Aden." Aden chuckled, having bullied this annoying fellow. But because they had fought side by side in so many battles in their previous life, he also understood his personality very well. Although Lu was now putting on a respectful appearance, he was actually extremely annoyed inside. His head was bowed very low, but in reality it was to hide the fact that he was grinding his teeth. Aden knew that well, so he also suddenly bowed his head low, primarily to observe the expression on Lu's face at that moment. "Hey, were you just wondering why this rogue suddenly paid attention to you, right?" Aden hit a nerve, and Lu was so startled he immediately stepped back several paces, then vehemently waved his hands, saying he wouldn't dare. Seeing his appearance as if he was about to be scared to tears, Aden was very satisfied. For the first time he felt happy to be reincarnated into this rogue's body. At least he could boss Lu around someone who had never respected him in their previous life. Then Aden specifically named Lu to come to the training ground with him tonight. At first he intended to refuse. However, when Aden approached and whispered something in Lu's ear, his complexion immediately darkened. "How do you know about that?" It seemed Aden had just exposed Lu's identity as a mercenary disguised as a knight, but actually, he had no ill intentions. The meeting between the two now felt like fate, and because in their previous life Lu had saved his life countless times in this life, Aden wanted to give him a small gift. So, that night, Lu obediently went to the training ground. When he arrived, Aden had been waiting for a long time. "Young master, how did you know about that?" Lu skipped the greetings, walked straight up to Aden and asked, trembling. Before Aden could answer, he continued. "About my secret. Ah, no. There's something more important. Is what you said true? Can you really fix my arm?" From the first moment he saw Lu in this life, Aden thought he had to fulfill his ultimate unfinished wish from their previous life, considering it as repaying Lu for saving his life back then. That was to give him a healthy right arm. That's right. Although Lu was an excellent mercenary, he also had another nickname, One-Armed Lightning, because Lu's right arm was missing. Now standing before the young Lu, although his right arm was still there, it was paralyzed. And that was what Aden had whispered into his ear at the training ground that afternoon. Lu was sure he had never revealed this secret to anyone. Even he himself didn't know why his arm had become like this. But Aden knew about that secret. He didn't beat around the bush and explain that Lu's right arm suffered from mana circuit severance syndrome. This is a general term for all forms of disabilities arising from the mana channels in the body. Hearing this, Lu couldn't help but start trembling. Isn't mana circuit severance syndrome incurable? He was skeptical because Aden had promised to heal this arm. Yes, people still say that, Aden replied. But that's because people haven't found a way yet. But you who transmigrated from 15 years in the future know. Because in 10 years humans will find a cure for this syndrome. It's just a pity that by then Lu's arm would already be gone. Aden was willing to heal his arm. But there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. And before confirming this, Aden required Lu to write a slave contract. It contained a few clauses. First, Lu had to spar with Aden daily. Second, he had to swear loyalty to him and do whatever Aden ordered. After Lu finished reading, his hair stood on end. He immediately threw the contract back at Aden. However, faced with the chance to have his right arm healed, he began to hesitate. After a while, Lu felt he should seize every opportunity, no matter how small. Therefore, he agreed to sign that slave contract. Aden was extremely excited. This was the free knight Lu, the one who in their previous life would curse him at every opportunity, now fated to become his slave. It was truly exhilarating. And besides, Aiden also intended to take that item as a reward for healing Lu's arm. What that item is will be revealed later. For now, all we know is that Aiden was extremely satisfied after Lu signed that contract of servitude. A few days later in a small town in Maryland, Lu and Aiden were riding in a carriage to this place. Along the way, beggars were plentiful and the scene was so dilapidated that Lu began to have some doubts. "Young master, are you sure it's here? No matter how you look at it, this place is still a bit—" "Are you doubting me?" Aiden cut him off, making Lu immediately anxious. "No, I didn't mean that, young master." At this moment the carriage stopped, and the coachman informed those inside that they had arrived. Aiden got out of the carriage first and Lu quickly followed. But even now he didn't quite believe they would find a cure for his right arm here. Aiden led Lu to the front of a pharmacy, on which hung a wooden sign with a few scribbled words. "This is not a clinic, so don't come here if you're sick. This is also not a place that sells drugs, so addicts get lost." In this life, Lu had never been here, but Aiden knew that in his previous life, this was where he had come for treatment. Someone here should be researching a cure for mono-circuit severance syndrome. Although it ultimately wasn't successful, the two pushed open the door and entered. The room was covered in dust, and there was absolutely no one there. Lu looked left and right for a while, then noticed a huge painting on the wall. He wondered, "Young master, what do you think this painting is alluding to?" "The Philosopher's Stone." Aiden replied, "That's a superstition that mages and alchemists believe in, a non-existent item believed to interfere with the domain of the gods. Something believed to be able to bring the dead back." This concept sounded a bit absurd, but that was before. Now Aiden didn't think so anymore. After all, he had even ascended to the heavens after ending his own life and was still alive and well here. So that Philosopher's Stone might not be an impossibility. "Oh my, that's not a story everyone knows. You seem quite knowledgeable, don't you?" Suddenly, a voice from the inner room startled Lu. Conversely, Aiden maintained his usual calm demeanor and replied, "I've traveled a bit, so I know a little more." "Well, it's been a long time since I've had such an interesting guest. But what can I do now? As the sign says, we're not in business." Aiden then ordered Lu to go outside first, and he obediently complied. Now only Aiden and the owner of that voice were left in the room. Actually, he knew who the opponent was, because in his previous life, Kansas and Sarah often talked about it. "All right, let's get straight to the point, Cassie." The opponent was even more surprised to see Aiden even knew her name. "My knight is suffering from mono-circuit severance syndrome, and I know you're also interested in this disease." Beastman alchemist Cassie Aiden could clearly see the opponent jump in surprise, but she quickly calmed down. She began to remove her hooded cloak. Under the black cloak was a beautiful sharp face, short fiery red hair and pointed ears that proved her Beastman identity. "Oh my, how much more do you know, useless young master?" Cassie's voice still sounded very arrogant until Aiden slowly approached, his gaze piercing through her disguise. "Just like you, my knight is suffering from mono-circuit severance syndrome. I also know your condition is worsening, and that herb is to prevent it from getting more severe, right?" At this point, Cassie could no longer maintain her arrogant demeanor. Aiden knew very well, although they suffered from the same disease, her condition was much worse than Lu's. His illness was limited to his right arm, but Cassie's illness had invaded her internal organs, making her very weak now. After a moment of daze, Cassie suddenly gave a helpless smile. She admitted that she suffered from mono-circuit severance syndrome and was looking for a cure. However, Cassie also had to say that she was still only at the research stage and hadn't found a real solution. "If it can be cured, I promise to protect and support your research in your territory," Aiden said resolutely. "No, young master. I've already said your knight's illness." Cassie had just said this when Aiden cut her off by slamming a piece of paper onto the table. "Read it." "What's this?" Cassie instinctively picked up the piece of paper, and its contents made her feel as if she had been struck by lightning. That's right, it was the cure for mono-circuit severance syndrome, written by Aiden himself. In his previous life, Kansas had talked about it so much that he had memorized it. Although it wasn't really perfect, this was why Aiden had to find Cassie, because he needed someone knowledgeable enough about this method even if the information wasn't entirely complete. Is it feasible? Aiden asked again. Cassie trembled with excitement, then uttered two words, half a month. She asked Aiden for half a month, just half a month, and she would perfect this treatment method. But with her current resources, finding the ingredients to make the medicine in it is indeed a bit difficult, Aiden said again. So what do you want? Give me that ring. Cassie burst out, laughing, intentionally playing dumb, not understanding what Aiden was saying. But how could she fool someone reincarnated like Aiden? Aiden knew very well the value of the ring with the sparkling red stone on Cassie's hand. Aiden also knew how important it was to Cassie. But even so, he still wanted to get it at all costs. It was the second reason he came here. The exact name of that ring is the Ring of Agility, an artifact that increases the user's physical speed threefold for 10 seconds and can be used up to 3 times a day. It is truly a useful item both in combat and when fleeing. Liu had received it as a souvenir in his previous life and became an S-rank mercenary with only one arm. The reason Cassie cherished this ring so much was because it was the best defensive item for someone with physical limitations like her. To solve that problem, Aiden suggested taking her to the Duke's castle. No one would harm her there, and moreover, Cassie would have the best conditions to research the treatment method. As long as I can do research, it's fine, but are you okay? There will be rumors that you brought a beast woman to the Duke's castle, Cassie asked. It doesn't matter, because my name is Aiden Remus, the infamous rogue nobleman. No matter what people say, I don't care. And so Aiden just like that brought a beast woman back to the castle. He used to find this place unfamiliar, but now it was truly his home. The three of them had just stepped through the gate when they saw Philip rushing over, his expression extremely panicked. Young master, it's not good. There's an emergency. Aiden glanced at the panting man and asked doubtfully, Philip, is that you? What's wrong? Philip gasped for breath, then reported, Young Master Cars has gone missing on Monster Mountain. Hearing these words, Aiden's expression immediately turned grim. Philip controlled his emotions and explained everything. 2 days ago, there was a report about someone going up the mountain and disappearing. So, young Master Cars formed an investigation team and set off to find out, but he still hasn't returned. The more he listened, the grimmer Aiden's expression became. Monster Mountain should only have low-level monsters, right? Aiden asked silently. What about the search party? Philip sighed and said, They will also be preparing to set off soon. Aiden's eyes immediately darted around. If Cars disappeared, would he have to take over and inherit the ducal position? If so, his revenge plan would go down the drain, so he had to save that kid. Thinking, Aiden pointed to the person behind him and said, Philip, I need to join the search party, so take Cassie to her room. Hearing this, Philip was so panicked he couldn't speak. Ignoring his reaction, he looked at Cassie and said, I have a favor to ask of you. She frowned doubtfully and asked, What favor? A moment later in the castle courtyard, Count Remus hesitated a bit after hearing Aiden's proposal. He frowned at him and asked doubtfully, Did you say you want to join the search party? Aiden nodded in acknowledgement without hesitation. Yes, father. No. Count Remus refused without hesitation. Aiden protested, Why not? He said in a low voice. Cars and dozens of other knights have all mysteriously disappeared. This incident is no longer a simple disappearance. I can't let you go to such a dangerous place. Aiden knew he couldn't talk to him normally, so he started using his acting skills, crying and saying, But Cars is my younger brother. If something happens to him, then... Seeing this expression of his, Fred was a bit flustered. For this performance, Oscar owes Aiden a trophy. He was at best just worried about his own plan. Curse knew his thoughts, couldn't help but mock, You're a bit despicable, dragon slayer. Aiden angrily scolded him. At that moment, Fred ran over and hugged him tightly. Moved, he said, I can't believe you care so much about your brother. All right, you can go, but be careful, Aiden. Saying that, he glanced at the person behind him and reminded, Spin, I entrust the task of protecting Aiden to you. Spin heard this and nodded. I will do my best. But in his heart, he considered Aiden a burden. A moment later at Monster Mountain, Spin led the group of knights into this place. Looking at the surroundings, Spin couldn't help but speak up. Just as we thought, it seems they were attacked. At their feet now were dropped weapons, blood spread on the ground. Their trail disappeared from here. At this moment, Aiden picked up a blood-stained knife and said in a low voice, "This blade is a weapon used by goblins." He also noticed many strange carvings on it. Perhaps Kars and the other knights were defeated by the goblins. And these low-intelligence goblins even knew how to erase tracks. There was only one explanation for this. As the king of goblins, they possessed the intelligence and strength of ordinary goblins. If it were them, this was entirely possible. Thinking, Aiden glanced at Spin and said, "It seems there are hobgoblins here." Hearing these words, Spin's expression immediately became grave. "Really? They're tough even for me. We should prepare more thoroughly before coming back." But Aiden shook his head and said in a low voice, "Time is crucial right now. If we delay even for a minute, they will be killed and eaten. Bring a hound." Spin was still worried about safety. He hesitated and said, "We already have hounds, but it seems even the scent has been completely erased. We should find another way." Aiden, tired of listening to nonsense, coldly scolded, "Stop talking and bring out the hound quickly." Spin was a bit flustered, but in the end he still brought the hound out for Aiden. Seeing the dog in front of him, he gave a mysterious smile. Immediately after, he took out a vial of medicinal herbs from his person. Without any hesitation, Aiden poured it all into the dog's mouth, smiling, not unlike those who go mad for scientific research. Such a good boy. Spin, watching from the side, couldn't help but curse inwardly. What is this demon doing to the hound? Not long after, the dog's nose immediately detected some scent. Immediately it looked towards the distance and barked loudly. Spin asked doubtfully, "What happened to it?" Aiden slowly explained, "That's a potion to enhance the sense of smell. Before leaving, I asked Cassie for a vial. It was quite useful in my search missions in my previous life." Immediately after, Aiden suggested everyone follow behind the hound. After a long while, they stopped at a forest. Looking down from above, this place was a village, but not for humans. It belonged to goblins. They also saw Kars and the knights locked in iron cages. Luckily, they were still alive. Aiden was silent for a long time before sighing in relief and saying, "It seems we're not too late." At this moment, Spin realized something was wrong. He muttered in a low voice, "But there's something strange." Aiden felt the same way. There were 3 hobgoblins. How on earth could there be 3 leaders in the same village? Spin felt the situation was not good. He hurriedly reminded, "This is more serious than I thought. Everyone prepare to go all out. Our opponent is the hobgoblin species, a tough opponent even for a mid-level knight." Saying that, he looked at Aiden and said, "Young master, while we fight, rescue the hostages and escape with them." Aiden nodded slightly and replied, "I will." In his heart, he was still pondering why there were 3 leaders here. But with such a large forcer, they could handle it without him getting involved. Their group, just like that, hid in the darkness. A moment later, Spin drew his sword and ordered, "Search party advance and rescue young Master Kars." As soon as he finished speaking, a group of knights immediately rushed forward. The goblins heard the noise and immediately paid attention. The knights of the Remus family charged forward with fury. The 2 sides quickly engaged in battle. Seeing the knights arrive to rescue them, the trapped knights were immediately overjoyed. Taking this opportunity, Aiden went to pick the lock with a knife. He glanced and asked, "Is everyone all right?" Seeing Aiden, everyone was a bit startled. Even Kars was no exception. The young boy's face couldn't help but look flustered. Ignoring everyone's reactions, Aiden quickly untied them. Immediately after, he ordered, "Knights, support me. Civilians, flee quickly." He guessed it was time to sneak away. Conversely, Kars cried out in panic, "Brother Aiden, be careful, there's a monster." Aiden couldn't help but ask, startled, "A monster?" Kars didn't answer. His face was just very panicked as he hurriedly shouted, "Behind you." Aiden was a bit doubtful. Behind him now was a giant monster. With a loud bang, the ground was shattered by its punch. Fortunately, Aiden managed to dodge in time, but his expression was a bit grave. It seemed he had overlooked something. The reason there were 3 hobgoblins. It was because of a creature of a higher rank than hobgoblins. Here the worst kind of humanoid monster, a troll. Thinking, Aiden hurriedly shouted, "Cars, take the villagers and escape first." Hearing this, Cars naturally didn't want to and said in panic, "That's a troll, you'll die." Aiden still spoke very firmly, "I know it's a troll, but I won't die. I'm your older brother, kid." Cars felt dissatisfied inwardly. "So what? You're just a good for nothing." Although Aiden spoke so boldly he wasn't 100% sure, but he didn't retreat, gripping his sword tightly and charging forward. The troll also didn't yield. It threw a punch, but it only hit the ground. But Aiden moved like lightning, successfully slashing its leg. The monster just like that collapsed to the ground. A long cut appeared on its leg, but surprisingly its wound showed signs of healing. Seeing this scene, Aiden's expression turned grim. It really was a troll. Its recovery ability was truly great. He couldn't defeat it with just his normal strength. Usually that would be the case, but Aiden still had an ace up his sleeve. At this moment, the troll ferociously charged. At the same time, the knights were terrified, seeing that giant monster, not understanding why it was here. Spin on this side was also very panicked and hurriedly shouted, "Young Master Aiden, let me handle this." Goblins were already difficult to deal with. This giant was even harder. He just hoped Aiden could hold on a little longer. At this moment, the troll threw a punch towards Aiden. Fortunately, his dodging speed was faster, so he managed to avoid it. At the same time, Aiden was holding a ring in his hand. This was what Cassie had given him as a precaution, and now was the time to use it. Thinking and doing, Aiden quickly activated the Ring of Agility. He had 10 seconds to send that troll to meet its maker. Although Aiden hadn't reached that level yet with this ring, he could. Immediately after, Aiden charged forward with his sword, delivering a large slash to the troll's arm. Without waiting for it to react, he slashed at its body repeatedly. Time passed quickly. Now only 3 seconds remained, but Aiden didn't stop continuously swinging his sword. Flashes of sword light, carrying mana, danced in the air. The troll took Aiden's continuous sword strikes, making it scream in pain incessantly. In the final second, Aiden's sword was enveloped in a ray of energy. It was the aura sword level. A final finishing blow was quickly delivered by him. At the same time, Spin's side had also finished. He hurriedly shouted, "Hurry, help young Master Aiden." But as soon as he finished speaking, he saw Aiden flying like a bird in the air, his sword emitting energy. He froze like a statue. Impossible. It's the aura sword level, even I haven't reached it yet. It's just that Aiden didn't have the strength to care about everyone's reactions right now. He was exhausted. His body, just like that, fell from high above, landing in a bush not far away. Aiden's body couldn't help but tremble as he muttered, "My whole body aches so much." Aiden sighed helplessly. He had clearly only used the aura sword for 10 seconds, yet his body was already immobilized. He had to use the Ring of Agility more carefully, but it really worked. While Aiden was thinking, everyone was frantically searching for him. The next day at Count Remus' castle, Fred stood by the window listening to his subordinate's report. After a long while, he whispered, "I see many people were injured, right?" He ordered Spin to make sure that the families of the dead or injured would receive the largest possible compensation. At this point, he suddenly hesitated and asked, "But is it true? Did Aiden defeat the troll?" Spin immediately replied, "Yes, I and the knights all witnessed it." Hearing Spin's confirmation, Fred couldn't help but sigh. Aiden not only could use the aura sword, but also defeated a giant. Was this the son he knew? That night, after returning, Aiden began to regulate the energy in his body. By using the sword's aura on the sword, he could feel his energy capacity increasing. But Aiden realized clearly that he was currently very weak. To be able to crush those scoundrels, he needed to become stronger. Thinking of this, Aiden's eyes filled with killing intent and determination. He would crush them. At this moment, a mocking voice sounded again. "I like that concern." Aiden flinched slightly, exclaiming in surprise, "What the hell? Where did you come from?" "Wait, that voice." Before he could finish speaking, that voice cut him off. "You've realized, haven't you? That's right, it's me, the Lord of Hell." Aiden looked up and saw a tiny dragon with none of the majesty of the Lord of Hell. So he burst out laughing, making the person in front of him furious and shout, "Don't laugh!" Aiden could really laugh himself to death. He yawned and mocked, "What's with that form?" Aiden's laughter made the Lord of Hell furious. He shouted incessantly, "It's all your fault, it's because you're too weak." Aiden laughed for a while before stopping, wiped the tear stains from the corners of his eyes from laughing, and asked doubtfully, "But how did you manifest?" With a light snort, the Lord of Hell pouted and said, "Only you can see me. You and I are one. When you become stronger, I can also manifest more clearly." Hearing this, Aiden was a bit dissatisfied. "So I have to see you from now on? I don't like that." The Lord of Hell angrily scolded, "Hey, that's very rude to the benefactor who saved your life." Shrugging indifferently, Aiden pouted and said, "So you say the Lord of Hell is a curse cast by the Demon King, and you were freed because the link with the Demon King was severed, right? So what's your real name?" Hearing this, the Lord of Hell's tone was a bit sorrowful. "My name was lost long ago. Now I just exist." Aiden thought for a moment, then opened his mouth. "Then your name from now on is Curse." He frowned slightly and asked, "Curse?" Having nodded, Aiden said nonchalantly, "Because you are a curse cast upon me, you will be Curse." The Lord of Hell immediately refused. "Doesn't that sound too stupid, Dragon Slayer?" Aiden pouted and mocked, "Shut up, this cursed creature." "Ah, no, I just mean Curse." The Lord of Hell finally couldn't stand his stubbornness and could only sigh helplessly in resignation. Aiden teased him for a little longer, then gave him another name, calling him Curse. After a commotion, Aiden thus spent a peaceful week. At this moment, Aiden was walking to Cassie's research room. He politely knocked on the door. After she gave permission, Aiden entered and asked doubtfully, "Cassie, is the treatment progressing well?" Cassie didn't answer either, but teased back, "Thank heavens, my giant lord is here." Aiden was a bit dissatisfied hearing this nickname. They called him the Giant Lord because he had killed that troll, as if Aiden were a troll himself. He didn't like that at all. Aiden decided to ignore this and asked doubtfully, "Where's Lou?" Cassie pointed inside and said, "That cute knight is inside." Hearing this, Aiden went in to take a look. As soon as he stepped in, he saw Lou sitting like a statue on one side. Immediately after, this statue turned its head towards Aiden and cried incessantly. He said through tears, "My arm is moving, it's back to normal." As soon as he finished speaking, Lou knelt on the ground and respectfully said, "Thank you, young master, for noticing and healing me. Although I am just a lowly person, I am willing to dedicate my life to you." Hearing these words, Aiden's heart was filled with joy. "That's right, from now on you will be my slave." Thinking, he smiled and said, "I will gladly accept your oath." Saying that, Aiden looked at Cassie and asked, "Haven't you undergone treatment yet?" Cassie nodded slightly and replied, "My energy blockage syndrome is a bit unusual. It will require more research, probably another month." Hearing these words, Aiden nodded slightly and replied, "All right, you're doing well." With a soft luff, Cassie nonchalantly smiled and said, "Not at all. It's all thanks to the methods you taught me, my giant lord." After hearing this, Lou couldn't help but laugh, but he still tried to keep his mouth shut. Aiden naturally heard the louder. Embarrassed and angry, he scolded, "Lou, if you're completely healthy, come out here quickly. We have work to do." Lou immediately nodded. "Yes, understood, sir. Assign me any task." A moment later, at the knight's training ground, Lou was sweating profusely, gritting his teeth and muttering, "Manual labor for the first mission. Come on." But now, even if he cried out to the heavens, no one would understand him. He was all alone on the training ground. A few hours later, a merchant approached from a distance, warmly greeting, "Hello, young master." Aiden nodded slightly, while Lou was now like a soulless corpse, constantly vomiting by his side. Aiden, too lazy to care, brought out the troll's corpse. Poban's eyes lit up as he spoke. "So, this is the giant troll you caught. Looking at this, it must sell for a high price. These are very rare." Aiden handed him a roll of cloth and said, "I want to use the money earned from selling this demon to buy these herbs. Is that all right?" Of course, our merchant guild has everything. Poban happily agreed before even looking, but as soon as he looked, he was horrified. "Young master, these aren't herbs, they're poisonous plants." Aiden leaned close to Poban's ear, flashing a perverted smile. "If I say they're herbs, then they're herbs, all right?" Poban's face immediately changed color. Trembling, he said, "Of course, sir, they are definitely herbs. If you act up, I don't know what might happen, so just accept it." Aiden easily resolved his matter and happily returned to his room. Seeing his smug, villainous expression, Kurz grumbled in dissatisfaction. "Your merchant habits haven't changed a bit, have they?" At this moment, Philip suddenly appeared looking for Aden. He was startled and looked up, asking doubtfully, "Philip, what's wrong?" Philip hurriedly reported, "The Duke is asking for you, sir." Aiden was a bit surprised. What did he want with him? With doubt, he went to his door and knocked. Aiden pushed the door open and entered, asking in a low voice, "Father, did you call for me?" But upon seeing the person sitting inside, his expression immediately turned grim. Seeing Aiden, Count Remus immediately spoke, "Aiden, you're here." The person sitting opposite him also quickly smiled and said, "So, you're Aiden." Aiden was still terrified seeing that person. What on earth was he doing here? That man glanced at Aiden, a mocking smile on his face. "Looking at your appearance, it seems the rumor about you killing a giant demon is true, isn't it? Nice to meet you." Remembering his past life, that man had also criticized Aiden, so he had no good impression of him. Reading Aiden's thoughts, Kurz asked doubtfully, "You know him?" He snorted coldly and said, "A little just an old man who looks down on merchants." Thinking, Aiden politely greeted, "Nice to meet you, sir. I am Aiden Remus. Greetings to the defender of the northeastern border, Marquis Tyreth Cetus." Tyreth asked, a little surprised, "You know me?" Although Aiden was dissatisfied, he still replied politely, "Of course, sir. After all, Marquis Cetus is one of the few in the Empire who has achieved the title of Swordmaster." Hearing these words, Tyreth couldn't help but smirk. Swordmaster is a realm that all knights aspire to. Those who have surpassed the realm of talent and reached the realm of transcendence can split mountains with just their swords, and they can make the air tremble with just their breath. Aiden was once one of them, and now he had to strive to achieve it again. At this moment, Tyreth smiled heartily and said, "You're very polite, quite different from the rumors. Fred, you've raised your son well." Fred, being praised, didn't dare to be arrogant and modestly said, "He still has much to learn. Is it all right to leave your territory like this? I heard your territory has been attacked by Orsers lately." Tyreth nonchalantly replied, "Not just my territory. I've also detected suspicious activities in the Slaughter Tower in the Deadlands, managed by the Iron-Blooded Holy Church." Hearing this name, Aiden's eyes filled with fiery anger. He also had some business to attend to there. That traitorous iron-blooded saintess, just wait and see. No one noticed the killing intent he had just emitted. Tyreth continued, "Slaughter Tower Cetus, and now Remus. The abnormal behavior of monsters is happening in all three places at the same time. Do you think it's just a coincidence?" Hearing these words, Fred also pondered deeply. After a long while, he muttered, "Now that you mention it, I also find it strange." Tyreth squinted at him and asked, "So I'm planning to form an investigation team. Will you join?" "Of course." Fred nodded without hesitation. Tyreth, satisfied, continued, "There's one more thing." Saying that, he walked over to Aden, patted his shoulder, and asked, "Do you want to join my Knight Order?" This action made Aiden a bit flustered. Why suddenly invite him to join a Knight Order? Seeing his reaction, Tyreth continued, "I've heard a lot about you. You achieved Aura Sword in just half a year of wielding a sword. I thought it was just nonsense, but seeing you in person, I understand now." Aiden still stood there silently, not saying a word. Tyreth squinted at him and smirked. "I will make you the best swordsman on the Western continent. I swear on my name." Before Aiden could even reply, Fred hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. "But Aiden still—" He hadn't finished speaking. Tyreth cut him off. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. What do you think, Aiden? The decision is yours." After hearing this, Aiden was silent for a long time. Then he smirked smugly and refused without hesitation. "Thank you very much for inviting me, but I must decline." Tyreth's expression showed a hint of confusion. He asked doubtfully, "Do you understand the meaning of joining the Cetus Knight Order?" Aiden calmly replied, I understand. It's one of the most famous knight orders in the Empire. But he was confident he could become a swordmaster on his own because he had done it in his previous life, so achieving that title in this life was just a matter of time. Aiden's eyes full of determination looked towards something. A moment later he said in a low voice, "And now, if I fight you, I can probably scratch you." As soon as these words were spoken, the expression on Tyrith's face was as if he had stepped in dung. He gritted his teeth and asked, "You'll scratch me? How rude." As soon as he finished speaking, the air suddenly fluctuated. A powerful energy emanated from around Tyrith. He snorted coldly and said, "You're indeed interesting." Aiden fiercely bit his lip trying to endure. This was an ability that made the air tremble with just killing intent. Truly, a sword master. Conversely, Tyrith was also very surprised, not expecting he could withstand his killing intent. He gritted his teeth and asked, "Are you sure you can keep your word?" With a smirk, Aiden nonchalantly replied, "Of course. Do you want to bet?" These words made Tyrith's eyes show a flicker of hesitation. Aiden knew he was right. His weakness was always gambling. He smirked and said, "If I can give you a scratch, I will join your knight order. But if I win, you must give me that sword." Saying that, Aiden pointed to the sword placed on one side. Tyrith was a bit surprised. He asked back doubtfully, "That sword?" Then he also retracted his own aura. He laughed loudly and said, "How brave, I didn't expect you to want my family heirloom. Fred, he's completely different from you." But no one answered. He glanced behind him and saw Count Remise unconscious, feet pointing to the sky. He sighed helplessly. He couldn't take it and fainted. After Tyrith finished speaking, he squinted at Aiden and said with a cold smile, "All right, I accept." At this moment, Curse had discovered his purpose and spoke up. "So you were aiming for that from the beginning?" Aiden nonchalantly replied, "Yes, I have to take that sword when I have the chance. That is one of the legendary swords Beelzebub." Hearing these words, Curse couldn't help but mock, "You've chosen the right side." A moment later at the training ground, Aiden and Tyrith were ready to fight. Aiden frowned at him and said with a smile, "Are you planning to use the Orser Slayer sword to fight an elf?" Tyrith also didn't yield and said with a cold smile, "I don't know if you're an elf or an Orcerer. No matter who the opponent is, a knight's duty is to do their best." Hearing these words, Aiden inwardly cursed. That damn knightly courtesy never changes whether in the past or present. This match had two conditions: no using Aura Sword, and Marquis Tyrith Cetus would not be allowed to move his right leg. It might seem unfair, but for a sword master that was nothing. If Aiden fought without thinking, he would be defeated immediately. At this moment, Tyrith spoke up. "We have quite a few spectators, don't we? Let's begin." "With pleasure," Aiden snorted coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure disappeared. Seeing this scene, Tyrith was a bit surprised, yet he could still block Aiden's sword tip as easily as flipping his hand. He smirked and said, "Aiming for the neck right from the start, huh? You're quite familiar with real combat, aren't you?" Aiden wasn't flustered either. Calmly stepped back and said with a soft laugh, "I knew you would block it." Just as he thought, the man easily blocked that blow. But Aiden didn't yield either, charging forward again, his sword dancing ceaselessly in the air. But in Tyrith's eyes, they were sloppy sword moves. He snorted contemptuously, "What is this crude swordsmanship? Why does it resemble the swordsmanship of those trashy merchants?" He said if you joined his knight order, you'd have to change. Hearing this, Kurz burst out, laughing, "I understand now what the relationship between you and him is." Aiden's eyes were now filled with fiery anger. Trashy merchants? This old man is really... He wanted to see how he would deal with this trashy swordsmanship. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward again. Under Aiden's relentless attacks, Tyrith only casually defended, his eyes full of contempt. Me lose to such a simple attack. However, at this moment, an unexpected change occurred that surprised him. Aiden's sword tip struck again. He hurriedly dodged to one side, but he didn't stop striking with an extremely heroic posture. Seeing this scene, the knights outside exclaimed in surprise, "Is Sir Aiden attacking? It seems the rumor about him defeating the troll is true." Even Fred was very surprised. Although under some restrictions, Tyrith was also a sword saint. His son was actually fighting him on his own. At the same time, Tyrith inside the battle was very flustered. Aiden's sword was becoming increasingly chaotic, but it was still a fatal blow, making it very difficult for him to defend. Aiden's aura was extremely aggressive. Tyrith couldn't help but smirk. Interesting. I must take you with me. At this moment, his sword began to counterattack. Aiden couldn't help but be flustered. He hurriedly leaned back to dodge, fiercely biting his lip. He had only just swung his sword, and it was already like this. Even Kerr spoke up to remind him, if you tried to block that blow, you would have been cut in two. Aiden didn't dare to be careless, stepping back a few paces. Tyrith squinted at him, raised an eyebrow, and said with a smile, "You're using an interesting type of swordsmanship, but that's all. That's not enough to defeat me." Aiden didn't yield either, pouting and saying with a smile, "I'm still standing here, Sir Tyrith. Please continue." Hearing these words, Tyrith laughed heartily. "You truly never disappoint me. My judgment of people is still sharp. Welcome to my knight order." Saying that, he raised his sword, preparing to strike. Aiden smirked and replied, "Thank you, sir." Neither side was willing to give in. It was an even match. Neither wanted to yield. But at this moment, Aiden's figure suddenly disappeared. Tyrith's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Could he move at this speed? Impossible. By now, even if he realized he was hiding his skills, it was too late. Aiden had swept in like a gust of wind. A cut immediately appeared on Tyrith's shoulder, fresh blood starting to ooze out. Aiden smiled smugly. "I will make good use of your Beelzebub sword." The situation changed too quickly. The knights outside couldn't adapt in time, muttering doubtfully, "What just happened? Is it over?" But when they finally reacted, they immediately cheered. Aiden still stood there, his face clearly showing victory. Kurz couldn't help but speak up. "Dragon Slayer, you used that ring without any shame." He pouted and said, "Me ashamed." This shamelessness of Auden made Kurz feel he couldn't keep up. He said in dissatisfaction, "You're more like someone from the underworld than a hero." Aiden felt there was nothing wrong with his actions. Tyrith approached and said, "You truly didn't disappoint me, tricking me into complacency by hiding your skills. Indeed, an opponent not to be underestimated." Aiden said modestly, "I was just lucky." The more Kurz listened, the more shameless he found him. Aiden, too lazy to pay attention to him, looked at the wound on Tyrith's shoulder and couldn't help but sigh. "But it's truly shocking. I thought he would lose an arm, but it turns out it was just a scratch." Tyrith kept his word. He handed the sword in his hand to him and said with a happy smile, "Keep it as promised." Aiden reached out to take it, bowed his head, and said, "Thank you, sir. I will keep it very carefully." But where Tyrith couldn't see, he flashed a smug smile. Kurz couldn't hold back anymore and spoke up. "Your expression is too despicable, cheating hero." Aiden wasn't to be outdone. Immediately, cursed back, "Shut up, you cursed thing." A moment later in Aiden's room. After returning, he observed the sword obtained in the bet. He exclaimed, "It's truly a legendary sword." Kurz also appeared and said, "Congratulations, Dragon Slayer." Aiden glanced disdainfully. "Where's the one who called me a cheating hero earlier?" Kurz chuckled and said, "But you don't know how to use that sword properly." "Properly?" Aiden glanced at him full of suspicion. Kurz slowly explained, "I know a secret about the legendary sword that humans don't." His eyes involuntarily narrowed. He exclaimed in alarm, "A secret or a curse?" Kurz smiled smugly, "But I won't tell you for free. If you promise to serve me like a king and never make me drink holy water again." However, before he could finish speaking, a stream of hot blood suddenly appeared on the sword. In just a blink of an eye, the sword was surrounded by a stream of energy. Aiden successfully made a blood pact with the sword. Kurz exclaimed in amazement, "How did you—" Humming lightly, Aiden said coldly, "You think your subordinate uses a dark sword, and I wouldn't know. Blissbup is one of the 72 legendary swords. They look simple and sturdy, but in reality, they were created from the corpses of fallen lords who once ruled the underworld in ancient times. Only later did people learn that they were cursed swords, each possessing the power of a different fallen lord. And one of the 3 conditions to awaken that power is to make a blood pact with them. The plan to subdue Aiden failed. Kurz angrily cursed. Damn it, I could have climbed on your head and sat there. Aiden snorted coldly at him. Serve you like a king. You're already dead. Prepare to drink holy water every day. The next day, Fred was handling official documents. Aiden came in from outside and told him his intentions. He asked doubtfully, You want to join Lord Tyreth's search party? He nodded slightly and replied, Yes, father. Fred hesitated for a moment, then said sternly, I know you're strong, but this mission is very dangerous. That place is very different from Demon Mountain. It will be very difficult for me to accept this request. Aiden looked at him intently and said firmly, But I will go with Lord Tyreth. Before he could finish, Tyreth laughed loudly and interrupted. I think so too, don't worry, Fred. He said he would ensure the boy's safety, so Count Remus didn't need to worry. Fred sighed with some reluctance. He hesitated and said, Son, this is not a picnic. Aiden nodded firmly. I know, father, but isn't this trip to ensure the safety of our domain? If it's for our domain, I want to go. Fred didn't know what to do with this proposal. Tyreth approached from a distance, chuckled, and said, Just agree, Fred. Isn't the kid very brave? Fred was still very hesitant, not knowing what to do. Aiden glanced at the tall person beside him, and where they couldn't see, a vile smile appeared. In his previous life he was useless, but this time he would prove his worth. Kurz seemed to realize Aiden's intention, pouted, and said, For the Duke's sake, wait a minute. Probably to awaken Blissbup. Aiden shrugged indifferently. There's no other way. The second condition to awaken the sword is to absorb as many life forcers as possible. Killing monsters gaining life forcer, it's convenient. The more he thought about the monsters, the more smug he became. Kurz saw his shameless smile and couldn't help but shiver. This is the first time I've felt so sorry for monsters. The next day at the Pieram mountain range, a riot was happening in the dark forest. Monsters were fleeing in panic as if being chased by ghosts. Moreover, their faces were covered in fear, as if something even more terrifying than them was behind them. Under Tyreth's persuasion, Fred finally agreed to let Aiden join him on the trip. After setting off, they stopped at a fortress. Aiden looked up at the city gate in front of him, sighing inwardly. This is Attila Fortress, built to defend against the magical beasts on Mount Pierin, right? The facilities and guards were all dilapidated. If they encountered a group of goblins, he was afraid they wouldn't be able to fight back. He didn't understand how they could drive away monsters anymore. While Aiden was dazed, a person came out from inside and bowed to them. He respectfully said, Hello, I am Davin Timon, the captain of this Attila Fortress. Welcome, distinguished guests, to this place. Master Swordsman Count Tyreth and Master Cho? Young Master Aiden Remis. At this point he suddenly smirked mockingly. Even the soldiers beside him started to mock Aiden's title. Hearing this, Lou immediately cursed in dissatisfaction. These bastards! Aiden, on the other hand, calmly reminded Lou, don't. His action surprised Curse a little. He asked doubtfully, That's strange, Dragon Slayer. You're being ridiculed and you're just letting it be. Aiden said calmly, What's the point of hitting people? I've heard it so much I don't even get angry anymore. But Tyreth was different. He was protective of his people and immediately spoke up. The air is so fresh that insects are buzzing around, aren't they? These bugs are so noisy, aren't they, Mr. Timon? As soon as he finished speaking, he began to exude his own aura, making Devon tremble in fear. Yes, the air is indeed fresh. The soldiers also fell silent. Aiden couldn't help but smile when he saw this scene. He really knows how to tease people. A moment later, Devon led Tyreth and the other person up the city wall, talking as they walked. I heard that monsters are attacking many territories. Aiden frowned upon hearing this and asked, Has there been any incident here yet? However, Devon ignored him and continued talking to Tyreth. Attila Fortress has nothing to worry about. Aiden felt an urge to hit someone, but ultimately restrained himself. Tyreth didn't pay attention to this. He said sternly, Monsters are lurking right outside the city, and there's nothing to worry about. Devon hesitated and said, Yes, sir. Because the orcers are stationed right in the middle of the mountains. Perhaps that's why no monsters dare to come this far. Hearing this, Aiden couldn't help but be stunned. Using monsters to manage monsters? What the heck is that? EGUYOE. At this moment, Kurz suddenly appeared and called out, Dragon Slayer, something big is coming. Aiden frowned slightly and asked doubtfully, What is it? I don't see anything. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his expression immediately turned grim. Aiden hurriedly shouted, Viscount Timon, the monsters are coming. Close the gates quickly. Devon treated his words like wind passing by his ears, smirking, Young master, you're joking a bit too much. What monsters? Fortunately, Tyreth realized it. He ordered in a deep voice, Viscount Timon close the gates immediately. Devon still didn't believe it. He exclaimed in amazement, Count you too. Before he could finish, the city wall suddenly shook violently, making him cry out in surprise. What is that? Tyreth calmly replied, A monster tide. Just as he said. From the forest, a wave of monsters as numerous as the Mongol army was rushing out. Seeing this scene, the soldiers immediately panicked. What is this, Viscount Timon? What should we do? What could they expect from Devon? At this moment, he was trembling like a leaf, unable to utter a single word. Seeing his reaction, Tyreth couldn't help but be dissatisfied. But there was no time to correct him. He hurriedly shouted, What are you waiting for? Close the gates. His shout awakened the soldiers below the city wall, who immediately pulled the ropes to close the gate. They were extremely rushed. A moment's delay and the monsters would swarm in. It's just that, no matter how fast they were, some still slipped through the net. A giant wolf as fast as the wind rushed in before the gate could close. The soldiers standing outside who saw it almost wet their pants. Their legs turned to jelly, unable to lift a single step. Fortunately, Aiden appeared in time and killed the wolf with one slash. At the same time, the gate slammed shut. Aiden didn't care about the monster's corpse, but looked at the sword in his hand, which was exuding dark energy. He sighed silently. It's not much, but absorbing life forcer is still okay. In this situation, the soldiers could still whisper and gossip about Aiden. Give them a fish stall and they could create a market. Aiden heard their gossip and became angry. Kurz, fearing it wasn't chaotic enough, laughed mockingly beside him. Master Cho, Aiden cursed in dissatisfaction. Shut up. The two of them fought like that in their minds. At this moment, the soldier Aiden had just saved came to his side, bowed gratefully. Thank you, young master, for saving my life. Aiden narrowed his eyes at him, then said in dissatisfaction, Instead of thanking me, pick up your weapon and defend the city. Lu also quickly ran over and asked worriedly, Young master, are you all right? Aiden didn't answer. He gestured with his chin forward and said, Lu, look. Lu hurriedly looked outside and saw a horde of monsters lurking outside the gate. He exclaimed in amazement, It's truly a terrifying number. On the contrary, Aiden on this side had a perverted smile whispering, From now on, these guys will be my snacks. Lu heard this and was caught off guard. What does this mean? Aiden didn't pay attention to him and continued, Beelzebub, you also eat them raw, right? Saying that he even licked the sword with his tongue, no different from a pervert. At this moment, Aiden realized his actions were very strange. Kurz, on the other hand, laughed at others' pain. Even the Dragon King couldn't hold back. Beelzebub is the sword of gluttony, stimulating the wielder's desire to absorb everything. He said he really liked hearing Aiden's inner voice. Hearing this, he shivered. He had to be careful. But anyway, he came here for Beelzebub to awaken. He had to devour all this spiritual power. But life isn't always rosy. Tyreth on the city wall suddenly poked his head out and said, Aiden, I'm going to clean up a bit and then go home. Knowing his intention, Aiden immediately exclaimed in panic, My lord, Count, no, I can handle it. Count, please rest a bit. Unfortunately, Tyreth didn't listen to his words at all. In a flash, he disappeared without a trace. Ignoring Aiden's desperate cry, he leaped into the air, striking an absolutely cinematic pose. He laughed smugly. One sweep to get rid of all of them, less trouble, right? Seeing this scene, the soldiers below were immediately astonished. That's a lightsaber. Only a master swordsman has that. On the contrary, Aiden on this side was about to pull out all his hair. He said agitatedly, No, At least leave half for me. No, a quarter is fine too, please. But Tyrith's light saber had already swept across. Attacking with the foreseer of a storm, Tyrith without hesitation wiped out the horde of monsters in one go. In less than 3 seconds, the ground was littered with corpses. Tyrith laughed very smugly. Ha ha, it's been a long time since I've properly unleashed my strength. It's so refreshing. Aiden, on the other hand, was crying without tears. After everything was settled, Devon poked his head out and said gratefully, "Thank you both. Thanks to you, we didn't suffer too many casualties." Aiden said nothing. Kurz jumped out and spoke Dragon Slayer. Aiden asked, annoyed, "What you want to mock me again?" But Kurz said seriously, "The thing I mentioned isn't a monster tide." Aiden asked in surprise, "Then what is it? Be more specific." He slowly explained, "Something big, not a monster tide." Hearing this, the look of regret on Aiden's face disappeared. He said in panic, "What? If it's not a monster tide, then—" Before he could think of an answer, he saw something rushing towards him. His eyes involuntarily narrowed. A giant fireball was rushing this way. Aiden immediately shouted a warning, "Everyone run!" With a loud bang, the flames engulfed the city wall. Its heat spread extremely wide. A group of soldiers couldn't react in time and could only be buried in the sea of fire. Tyrith was also pushed back by its forcer. He pursed his lips and said, "A fire spell of this magnitude is a mage targeting us." Aiden shook his head slightly in denial. "That's not a mage." Kurz also asked, in some surprise, "Do you know what kind of creature that is?" Aiden slowly explained, "The fire mages and the Pierin mountain range. Those are creatures from my previous life. Because of that thing in his previous life, he almost didn't make it to heaven." How could he forget Kurz looked like he had just heard a joke? "You in heaven don't make me laugh." At this moment, the pleasant sound of Luke Lack's bell suddenly rang out. But to the soldiers' ears it wasn't pleasant at all. They trembled and muttered, "Why are they all gathered in one place?" In front of the city wall now was a horde of giant demons and orsers. Devon exclaimed in panic, "Why are the giant demons from the wasteland and the orsers from the Pierin mountains gathering together? Aren't they always fighting each other? Go. Ignoring him, Tyrith stepped forward and said, "I'll be right back, Aiden." But Aiden reminded him in a deep voice, "You can't fight them all alone." Tyrith's footsteps immediately halted. He frowned and asked, "I can't—" Aiden didn't answer either, just calmly said, "Look behind them." Tyrith followed his words and looked over and saw a monster holding a scepter in its hand. His expression immediately turned grim. "What is that?" Aiden slowly explained, "That's a monster with magic, and strength comparable to a master swordsman, a high-level troll." Hearing this, Tyrith hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Aiden, Mr. Timong, evacuate everyone immediately." Because even he could only buy a little time. Just then, Aiden suddenly spoke up, "There's still a way." Tyrith looked at him in surprise. "What? Even I find it difficult. How do you plan to deal with them?" Aiden didn't answer him, glanced at Lou and ordered, "Lou, lead the soldiers, and do your best to hold back those creatures." Lou immediately took the order and ran off. Tyrith still didn't know what Aiden was planning. He asked doubtfully, "What are you planning to do?" "Just a high-level demon alone is already on par with a master swordsman. You know you can't handle them right." Mac nodded. Aiden calmly said, "I know. When a high-level giant demon creates an army of giant demons, defeating it is 3 times harder than usual. Even if you fight them alone, you won't last long. But there is a way for everyone to live. Since they don't have much time, Aiden will be brief." Immediately after, Aiden began to tell everyone his plan. At first, they didn't feel he had any good plan. But the more they listened, the more Tyrith and Davin's expressions turned grim. Devon said resentfully, "What? That's ridiculous. If the Marquis leaves now, this place will become a ruin in just 30 minutes. But as soon as he finished speaking, the city wall behind him immediately exploded, smoke and fire erupting everywhere. Tyrith hesitated for a moment, then, after a long while, he spoke, "Aiden, do you know how ridiculous your words are?" Aiden wasn't flustered either. He calmly said, "I know, but that's the only way. We don't have much time. This time, Please believe me." Hearing this, Tyreth fell silent, recalling the moment since he met Aiden until now. Every word he said astonished him. Immediately after, he smirked and said, "Just as I thought. I really want to have you? All right, this time I'll believe you." But Mr. Tyreth had a condition. If Aiden was wrong, he would have to join his knightly order. Hearing this, Aiden couldn't help but sigh. What a gambling fanatic. But he still agreed. Hearing Aiden's words, Tyreth immediately leaped and flew away. Kurz then appeared and said, "Is there only one high-level giant demon in this world? Are you sure you faced this demon in your previous life?" Aiden calmly said, "Do you know how much giant demons and Orsers hate each other? Yet there's one that can subdue the Orsers. That's it. It was also thanks to using extremely vicious methods. On this side, the giant demons had begun to attack. Its power was too great. The soldiers were like a disturbed beehive, their formation broken by it. At the same time, Lou rushed off according to Aiden's orders. He had also arrived at the location by now. Without hesitation, he swung his sword, and in one breath he beheaded the giant demon. Aiden was a little surprised. He didn't expect Lou to be strong enough to kill a giant demon. The herb he gave him must have worked. Kurz felt it made sense and exclaimed, "It seems that strange method worked. But that alone isn't enough to kill the giant demons. There's a reason why the giant demons are led by a high-level demon." At this moment, the demon carrying the scepter suddenly cast a spell, only to see raging flames suddenly appear and surround the giant demon that had just been beheaded. The soldiers thought they had defeated it, but then they saw the hovering head blink and return to the giant demon's body like a magic trick. Aiden had realized this. The high-level giant demon could continuously resurrect the giant demons. Usually to destroy them, one needs the light sword of a master swordsman or the magic spell of a great mage. But Aiden had a better method. Thinking of this, he looked at the sword again and chuckled. "You skipped your meal earlier, so you must be very hungry now, right? I'll let you eat buffalo meat later." Kurz couldn't help but shiver. "Beelzebub, you must have suffered a lot during this time." At the same time, Lou on this side was fighting the giant demon alone. After eating Aiden's herb, he thought he would be strong enough. But he couldn't believe things would end like this. He hadn't even repaid Aiden yet. While Lou was thinking, the giant demon's fist rushed towards him again. He had no way to resist, only able to close his eyes and wait for death. But at this very moment, Aiden's voice rang out. "Well done, Lou." Lou looked up in amazement and saw Aiden standing on the giant demon's shoulder. Then without hesitation, he thrust his sword down. The pain immediately struck, causing the giant monster to roar. Seeing it tremble incessantly, Lou hurriedly reminded, "Young master, be careful. Even if you behead that thing, it won't die." Aiden still spoke very calmly. "All right, Beelzebub, it's time to eat." As soon as he finished, the sword in Aiden's hand began to emit swirling dark energy. His body didn't possess the strength of a master swordsman or a great mage, but Aiden possessed the gluttonous power of the great mage Beelzebub. Beelzebub would absorb the target, and once the target was absorbed, it would be completely obliterated. Sure enough, not long after the giant monster fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, the high-level demon's expression immediately turned grim. But Aiden on this side laughed smugly. "These giant demons are delicious, aren't they? Just one is already equivalent to a dozen wolves." As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at the demons behind him. Aiden's fierce gaze made the demons immediately startle in fear. And that wasn't enough. A perverted smile appeared on Aiden's lips, accompanied by a lip-licking gesture. "I wonder if Orsers are tasty. Beelzebub, do you want to try them?" And so immediately after, Aiden began to slaughter the monsters. In just a moment, he was standing on a mountain of corpses. He glanced at the monsters behind him, a perverted smile on his face. The fourth one, still not enough. There are still many giant demons inside. No matter how much I eat, I still crave more. Isn't that right, Beelzebub? Hearing this, the remaining monsters behind him trembled in fear. The high-level monster was so angry it gritted its teeth. It immediately raised the scepter in its hand, creating a raging fire. However, Aiden wasn't scared either. As fast as lightning, he weaved through the flames. He ran and muttered, You guys look really angry. Kurz couldn't help but mock. Instead of running around like a coward, why don't you face it, Dragon Slayer? Aiden shrugged, indifferently, pouted, and replied, I did that in my previous life, but now I can only run. If I get hit by his fire magic, I'll become roasted meat. He had talked to Tyreth before. He just needed to endure until he arrived. While Aiden was thinking, an axe suddenly struck. Kurz hurriedly reminded, Dragon Slayer above. Aiden flinched slightly and looked up. Fortunately, he dodged in time. The monster's axe slammed into the ground. Biting his lip fiercely, Aiden cursed angrily. These damn Orsers so annoying. At this moment, Kurz suddenly spoke up to remind him. But Dragon Slayer, why don't you absorb the Orsers? I just mentioned, Orsers may not be as good as giant demons, but they still have quite a lot of life force here. Hearing this, Aiden smiled mysteriously. That's because they will be used for other things. If our respected Tyreth arrives in time, not killing the Orsers will be more beneficial. Until then, I just need... Aiden wanted to say something, but a flame suddenly struck. His expression immediately turned grim. He pursed his lips and said, that high-level giant demon is using fire magic again. The flames grew larger and larger, and before long they engulfed a large area of land. The high-level monster walked arrogantly through the raging flames. Just then, it suddenly saw something in the sky. Aiden was flying in the air, striking a beautiful pose. He shouted fiercely, now try to burn everything without the ring of speed, I'd probably be roasted by now. But at this moment Kurz suddenly jumped out and said something like you. Aiden was a little doubtful about what he wanted to say. He hesitated for a moment, then mocked, if you dodge in the air, how do you plan to avoid the next attack? Only then did Aiden realize this. That's right. I'm hovering in the air. How am I supposed to dodge the fire? The raging fire struck again. Aiden hurriedly shouted, I can't die here like this. Fortunately, Tyreth arrived in time. The sword light in his hand immediately struck out. It successfully blocked the flame. He also didn't forget to praise, well done, Aiden. Seeing him, Aiden immediately cheered up. You extinguished the entire flame in a blink of an eye, didn't you? Just as he thought a master swordsman was something else entirely. He had gone so far and arrived in such a short time. Looking at the person walking beside him, it seemed everything was fine. Seeing that person, the high-level monster immediately shouted, why is that guy here? The monsters beside him were equally terrified. Aiden laughed very smugly. The situation has changed, you hideous giant demons. But his joy didn't last long. Kurz spoke up to remind him, hey, Dragon Slayer, you're falling. Aiden then dazedly realized he was powerlessly falling. He hurriedly shouted, wait, I've used up all my strength and I'm falling. Fortunately, before his butt hit the ground, he fell into someone's warm embrace. The other person quickly and safely landed on the ground. Aiden looked at the person who had just let him down, somewhat speechless. The one who caught him was actually that monster, but he still sincerely thanked him. But he didn't care, and went straight to the trembling monsters on this side. The knights outside who saw this scene couldn't help but be stunned. That Orser did it, just saved the young master? Ignoring everyone's reaction, the Orser monster slowly said, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. My kind has... At this point, it suddenly paused, then shouted, let's take revenge on the giant demons who insulted us. As soon as it finished speaking, a group of Orsers appeared confronting the giant demons. Seeing this scene, the knights outside were a little slow to react. What's going on? Why are the Orsers suddenly attacking the giant demons? Aren't they on the same side? What the heck is happening? Kurz was also amazed and exclaimed, exactly as you said. Aiden calmly said, I told you. That's why the high-level giant demon can control the Orsers. It exploited the Orsers' loyalty to their tribe and chieftain to fight against them. It took the chieftain and the children hostage to control the Orsers. But what if all the hostages were released? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's why Aiden didn't absorb the Orsers. At this moment, the high-level monster couldn't hold back anymore. The hand holding its staff was trembling incessantly. It roared fiercely, my plan! But before it could finish, something unexpected happened. Tyrith had rushed from a distance to attack, but it managed to use fire magic to defend itself in time. This action surprised Tyrith a little. Indeed, someone who can rival a master swordsman. Just as Aden said if it were just him, he wouldn't be able to win. But this time, he wasn't alone. The Orser accompanying him had also started to join the battle by now. This Orser was another master swordsman. Everything had changed. The high-level monster was cornered by two master swordsmen unable to escape at all. Its roars echoed incessantly. Tyrith snorted coldly and said, "That's enough screaming. Be quiet and die." Biting its lip fiercely, the high-level monster cursed angrily. "I can't die so meaninglessly. I will never forgive the people who killed my parents." As soon as it finished speaking, flames appeared in its hands again. Seeing this, Tyrith was a little surprised. What's wrong with it all of a sudden? This mana flow is too strange. Even the Orser paused for a beat. Under their doubtful gazes, the high-level monster suddenly threw its head back and roared, "I will detonate all the mana in my body and send you to heaven with me." Tyrith hurriedly dodged to the side, falling into deep thought. Even he couldn't stop this. The knights couldn't withstand that burst of flame either. Immediately after, he hurriedly shouted, "Everyone run, it's about to explode." But as soon as he finished speaking, Aiden suddenly rushed forward like the wind. Tyrith exclaimed in panic, "Aiden, come back! You'll die!" However, Aiden didn't listen at all, and at this moment he even had a smug smile on his face. He rushed straight towards the high-level monster, his sword-wielding stance absolutely cinematic. Aiden roared fiercely, "The final blow to this monster will be mine." With a loud bang, a heaven-shattering explosion rang out. The sword in Aiden's hand had pierced straight into the high-level monster. Two powerful energy sources quickly collided. Aiden gripped his sword tightly, using all his strength to hold on to the monster's body. He laughed smugly. "The final blow is mine." Time for the main course, Beelzebub. The mana from the monster's body grew stronger and stronger. But Beelzebub in Aden's hand relentlessly absorbed it. Everyone outside was extremely worried. Tyrith, on the contrary, was very surprised. He didn't think he could withstand that explosion. Could it be that he had another plan? Inside the explosion, Aiden still held the sword tightly, letting it absorb the spiritual power. Beelzebub was now shrouded in dark energy. The amount of spiritual power and mana was more than he thought. He probably couldn't absorb it all. At this moment, the high-level monster suddenly roared again. Aiden's expression suddenly darkened. He bit his lip fiercely. Just a little more. As he spoke, he gripped the sword tightly, ignoring the fact that it was trembling from over-absorbing spiritual power. Aiden hurriedly shouted, "Now curse, I need your help." Curse immediately materialized, cursing in dissatisfaction. "Dragon Slayer, how can you use me for things like this? But if you promise not to drink holy water for a week, I'll help." Aiden was dying of urgency, and he was still there joking around. He hurriedly shouted, "All right, hurry up." The sword had absorbed enough life force ray. Now the final condition to awaken the sword was to channel mana to awaken the fallen lord sleeping within it. Kurz quickly placed his hand on the sword and slowly said, "Awaken gluttonous god Beelzebub." Immediately, the invisible chains binding Beelzebub began to stir. The sword's blood-red eyes also opened slightly. A deep voice rang out. "Mana? Huh. It's been a long time. I am the consciousness of the gluttonous god, the one who devoured the entire sky. Who dares to awaken me?" Hearing the roar, Aiden immediately realized he had successfully awakened it. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Indeed, the ancient ruling god of hell is different. It's overwhelming." If he were an ordinary person, his mind would have been controlled, and he would have become a puppet. But he had what he feared most. At this moment, Curse opened his mouth to speak again. "It's been a long time, Beelzebub. Are you asking who woke you up?" The familiar sound startled Beelzebub, his voice laced with a hint of fear. "Why are you here, Lord of Hell?" Humming lightly, Curse said coldly, "That's enough chit-chat. Hand over your power to me quickly." Beelzebub trembled and said, "I didn't expect to meet you right after waking up." Kurz was too lazy to listen to his nonsense and interrupted in a deep voice, Are you going to give it or not? Even if he had 10 livers, he wouldn't dare not to. The Lord of Hell had defeated all the fallen lords and became the ruler of Hell. No wonder he was so afraid of the Lord of Hell. Aiden glanced at Kurz and smiled. You're quite useful, aren't you? Kurz glared at him, pouted, and opened his mouth. Remember to keep your promise. At this moment, the strong mana flow erupted again. Aiden nodded affirmatively. Of course. Saying that, he gripped the sword tightly again and shouted, Devour it, Beelzebub! The demon in the sword, following Aiden's shout, began to absorb the spiritual power, causing the monster to roar in pain. Feeling its spiritual power about to be exhausted, the monster couldn't help but get angry. The mana vortex relentlessly flowed, causing the surrounding air to fluctuate. Tyrith hurriedly shouted a reminder, I can't see anything. Everyone be careful. At the same time, inside that mana flow, Aiden was still fighting fiercely. He roared fiercely, Become my strength. The life and death battle continued like that. After a while, the mana gradually dissipated into the air, returning a clear blue sky to the world. Aiden stood there proudly, proving he had won. Only then did Tyrith see everything clearly. He muttered, Has the wind stopped? Where is the giant demon? But no one answered him. Aiden still stood there silently. He had absorbed all the true power of the gluttonous god, all its life force array and mana. At this moment, Aiden suddenly felt nauseous. He hurriedly covered his mouth. Kurz saw this and teased, Eating everything is your fault, you know. No matter how strong the power is, if you abuse it, it will become poison. Dragon Slayer, you'll have to vomit. Aiden was unwilling. He would swallow it all at any cost, but he really couldn't stand that morning sickness like nausea. At this moment, Aiden suddenly saw an egg at his feet. Aiden recognized it. It was a phoenix. No wonder it used fire magic. It was absorbed by the high-level giant demon and returned to a dormant state. This is a species as rare as dragons. He didn't know why it was here, but very quickly Aiden dismissed this issue because he was thinking about something. If he ate, it could have used fire magic. Kurz couldn't help but remind him, Aren't you about to vomit from eating too much? Shrugging indifferently, Aiden smirked vilely and said, That's right, but being able to use fire magic is another story. Kurz sighed helplessly and exclaimed, Looking at you like that makes me realize how greedy humans can be. Aiden ignored these meaningless teases. He sat down next to the egg and said smugly, Thanks for the meal. But things weren't that easy. Tyrith came from behind and patted him hard on the back, praising, So you finally succeeded, Aiden. This awkward pat made everything Aiden had just swallowed come back up. Seeing this, Tyrith couldn't help but doubt, Are you okay? Kurz, on the other hand, laughed at others' pain. Serves you right for being greedy. And Tyrith had also noticed the egg. He exclaimed in amazement, That's a phoenix. Why is such a rare creature here? Aiden didn't care. On one side, he was crying without tears, spitting those things out. His mana and life force here, and he still had to eat the phoenix. But at this moment, the eggshell suddenly cracked. Aiden stared at the crack in astonishment. Why so suddenly? But he had no other choice but to watch it hatch. Not long after, a pair of flaming wings appeared. The fire phoenix soared in the vast sky. Kurz didn't miss any opportunity to mock Aiden. The phoenix awakened after receiving mana from your vomit. Look. AVA. Seeing the creature that had just appeared, the knights outside were also very surprised. They knew it was the legendary phoenix. Seeing it with their own eyes was a stroke of luck. Everyone was admiring the phoenix. Aiden on this side glared at Tyrith in dissatisfaction. It was all this old man's fault. He had missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. While Aiden was thinking, his head suddenly felt heavy. The fire phoenix suddenly landed on Aiden's head. He also didn't understand why it was sitting on his head. Under everyone's doubtful gazes, the fire phoenix suddenly chirped twice. Immediately after, a stream of energy and burning flames appeared around Aiden's body. Seeing this, Tyrith and Lou outside immediately panicked. Aiden thought it knew he had tried to eat it and was now going to burn him alive. However, its flames weren't hot at all. What on earth was going on? Kurz then jumped out to explain, That's a blessing from the phoenix. It will give you the power to resist most flames, because it awakened thanks to your mana. Perhaps it considers you its savior." Hearing this, Aden immediately cheered up. Then he has an advantage in fighting against Asura. A moment later, the phoenix's feathers began to fall scattered in front of Aden. Without hesitating for another moment, the phoenix also quickly flew away. Aden watched it go, then reached out to pick up one of its feathers. Tyrith hurriedly ran over at this moment and asked worriedly, "Are you okay? You were just burned." "Yes, I'm fine." Aden waved his hand and chuckled. Confirming he was fine, Tyrith immediately praised, "Thanks to meeting you, I've witnessed so many unbelievable things." Aden smiled politely and said, "I'm just as bewildered as you are. This is also the first time I've witnessed these things," saying that he noticed something else. Aden glanced at the approaching person and asked doubtfully, "You are the Orser tribe leader. Why are you still here? Do you want to continue fighting?" He was silent for a long time, his hands clenched into fists. Aden thought he wouldn't speak, but suddenly heard a low voice. "Breaking an oath will have a price. The price is death. You behead me." Aden couldn't help but be doubtful. He asked suspiciously, "Break an oath? What oath?" And so the Orser chieftain told Aden about his oath. A long time ago, the Remus family head and the Orser chieftain fought on this land. The Orser chieftain lost and swore never to come down from the mountain again. Then they settled in the mountains and protected this land. Finally, Aden understood why the Orsers didn't come down the mountain and that Orsers were a race that respected oaths more than their own lives. After the Orser chieftain finished speaking, he spoke again. "My head is enough. Please spare my tribe, please." Aden didn't pay attention, casually waved his hand and said, "I don't need your head, go back." However, the Orser chieftain shouted unwillingly, "My ancestors' oath must be paid for breaking it." His voice made Aden angry. It's really too noisy. He wondered if he should behead him right away, but since they were protecting their territory, he decided to be patient. Thinking that he planned to lift his foot and leave, but suddenly remembered something. He quickly turned his head and said, "Then pay the price with something other than your head." Hearing this, the Orser chieftain was immediately astonished. The next day, at the recently breached fortress, everyone was starting to rebuild. Seeing this, Tyrith couldn't help but exclaim, "Am I seeing things?" Aden chuckled lightly and said calmly, "Is that a compliment? Thank you." At the same time, the fortress soldiers were struggling with the sandbags to build the city because they were too heavy. But on the contrary, the Orsers could carry them like pebbles extremely skillfully. Tyrith stood outside watching the people come and go, the amazement in his eyes still lingering. He whispered, "Orsers and humans working together. How come?" Aden winked and chuckled. "It would usually take several months, but with the help of the Orsers, it will only take a week. The Orsers can protect the chieftain's life, and we can get labor. It's a win-win situation." Hearing this, Tyrith couldn't help but chuckle. "You always surprise me. It's like talking to a dragon that has lived for hundreds of years. By the way, he said they should leave this matter to the Slaughter Tower. Now even the monsters in the Deadlands have appeared. It's out of control." Hearing this, Aden's expression immediately changed. He said in a deep voice, "Understood." He had achieved his goal, so there was nothing to worry about anymore. He just wanted to awaken Beelzebub, but he even received the Phoenix's blessing. Now he would probably quietly return to practice more. Another day passed. Aden returned on horseback. The people also came out to see him off. "Thank you for saving our domain, young Master Remis. You are truly wonderful. Long live the Troll Lord." Aden silently listened to the gossip below his face, showing a look of helplessness. He also didn't know where these rumors came from, and he extremely hated such superficial welcoming ceremonies. Even curs couldn't help but chuckle. "They're not that superficial. Maybe they just want to see you as a hero." Aden pouted. "So what if I'm a hero? Being a hero doesn't make money." Hearing this, curs immediately cursed in dissatisfaction. "Money again? You're more suited to be a mercenary than a knight." Aden didn't answer either, just smirked. Anyway, this time, he just planned to train quietly. Aden traveled for a long day and finally returned to Count Remus's mansion. He went straight to Cassie's research room. After hearing Cassie's report, Aiden couldn't help but feel troubled. So there's no way to fix it? Cassie shook her head slightly and replied, I'm sorry, but there's no way right now. It seems the mana circuit severance syndrome on my body is worse than I thought. We need more ingredients to make medicine than when we treated that cute knight. Aiden frowned slightly and asked, How much does it cost I can pay? Cassie sighed helplessly. Money is not the issue. We need an alchemist to create the highest grade divine potion. That person can only be found in the Imperial Palace. Anyway, she was very grateful to Aiden. If she stayed here, she would die of old age while searching for a cure. Hearing this, Aiden immediately stood up and said calmly, Then we just need to find an alchemist, right? Cassie was a little helpless. Didn't you hear, young master, that person must— But before she could finish, Aiden coldly interrupted, I know someone. Saying that, he turned and walked out the door, not forgetting to reassure, Don't worry, just wait here. I'll be back soon. At first, Cassie was still skeptical. Aiden suddenly came to see her and offered to teach her a method to cure mana circuit severance syndrome, even providing research funds. Knowing her body couldn't last long, she had no choice but to accept his offer. But in the end, Cassie suffered greatly. She was completely devastated when she learned that the method to cure her body was almost impossible. And now the people Cassie had met were all outwardly warm but inwardly cold. But Aiden was different. Although his words were cold, his actions were very warm. It had been a long time since she felt so warm. Thinking that, Cassie sighed in relief. After calming her emotions, she spoke calmly. Young master? How interesting. Then please bring me an alchemist. After all, my research is perfect. Aiden just smiled without replying, then lifted his foot and stepped out. Kurz then materialized and asked doubtfully, You're acting for someone else's benefit. People say such sudden changes are very dangerous. You have to be careful. Aiden pouted and replied calmly, I'm just keeping my promise. Promises are very important to mercenaries. Anyway, I'm planning to meet that alchemist. Because he knew that person didn't have much time left. 3 days later in the city of Makelin, the noisy sounds of the streets echoed incessantly. Aiden blended into the crowd, unable to help but exclaim, The largest free trade city in the Empire, truly a bustling city. Kurz asked with some doubt, This is a city, what do you mean? Aiden slowly explained, A famous city where you can feel everyone working hard. And then it disappeared due to the attack of a mad dragon. Thinking of this, Aiden couldn't help but sigh. He was probably the only one who found this situation strange. Kurz read this thought and asked doubtfully, So, Dragon Slayer, where is the talented alchemist you're talking about? Aiden calmly replied, I'm looking for the way, so be quiet. On the other side, in the outskirts of Makelin City, a group of thugs was surrounding a man. The leader kept shouting, Didn't I tell you to prepare the goods today? The surrounded man sat cowering in the corner, trembling, and said, But no matter how hard I try, I can only make one a week. If you suddenly ask me to work double to create high-grade divine potions— But before he could finish, the leader slammed his fist against the wall as a warning. He said coldly, I don't care. Be careful, Joseph. If you don't deliver the goods tomorrow, your mortgaged assets will be damaged. Joseph's face turned grim upon hearing this. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from outside the alley. Threats, fraud, extortion. Anyone in trouble, come see me. This sound caught the attention of the people inside. The leader immediately ordered, Who is that Karen? Take care of him. The person named Karen immediately stepped forward. He asked coldly, Who are you? What are you doing here? The other person pouted and chuckled, You don't know me. This attitude angered Karen. He gritted his teeth and cursed, Stop loitering here and get lost. Unfortunately, the other person didn't care. He poked his head out, looked at Joseph and asked, Are you being extorted, threatened, or defrauded, right? Being ignored, Karen was enraged. He gritted his teeth and cursed, You damn dog, how dare you ignore me? Immediately after, he threw a punch at the other person's face. However, the other person just casually waved his hand, sending Karen flying, slamming hard against the wall. Seeing this, the thugs immediately panicked. The leader frowned and asked, Who the hell are you? The person who arrived was Aiden. He smirked and said, Move aside, I need to see a client. saying that Aiden withdrew his hand. Being interrupted by him, the leader immediately rushed forward with his sword roaring fiercely, "You dare touch my men, I'll kill you." Unfortunately, his striking speed was too slow. Aiden casually dodged and avoided it. Immediately after he closed in on him, a mysterious smile on his face. Without a moment's hesitation, Aiden reached out and pulled down the leader's pants, revealing underwear printed with a cute teddy bear and cheese sticks. His secret exposed, the leader flew into a rage. He roared fiercely, "You elf-faced bastard!" Aiden frowned at him and asked in dissatisfaction, "What did you just say?" The leader roared madly again. "You think you can touch Cerberus, the #1 predator of this market city, and escape? You're dead for sure." But as soon as he finished speaking, a powerful surge of energy suddenly struck. His sword immediately shattered. This scene almost made the leader wet his pants. He trembled and asked, "Who are you? How can you use Aura Sword?" At this moment, Aiden had taken out the Beelzebub sword, which was still covered in energy. He closed in on him and said coldly, "Your eyes are about to need treatment." A moment later, Aiden fiercely used Beelzebub to beat the leader. He was beaten into a pig's head. He snorted coldly and cursed, "You dare compare me to an elf? Consider yourself lucky that I'm still being generous." Seeing Aiden's face, the remaining thug trembled and asked, "Why is a young master like him in this slum?" Aiden didn't pay attention to him at all. He slowly walked towards Joseph. He raised an eyebrow and chuckled, "Uncle, what's up? Do you need my help? I'll charge a reasonable service fee." Joseph stared intently at Aiden. A swordsman who had awakened his sword light was offering to help him. And for such a cheap price, he wouldn't ask for something else. Later, would he? Could he trust him? Aiden saw the hesitation in his eyes and said nothing, just smiled. He knew he had no other choice. Sure enough, immediately after Joseph cried and begged, "Please help me." Joseph was a famous alchemist from China in the underworld of Maitland City. His daughter had been kidnapped by the Cerberus gang. Although Joseph tried to resist, it was useless. The little girl was still taken away. The leader of the Cerberus gang had told him that. Just give them one divine potion every week, and they would protect his daughter. The old man also said this was a fair deal. Remember, this is a very dangerous place. For his daughter's safety, Joseph gritted his teeth and endured. In his previous life, he had to deliver medicine for several years. But when he heard that his daughter had died long ago, he pleaded guilty, helped take revenge, and then committed suicide to reunite with his daughter. That was just his previous life. It wasn't too late now. Not hearing an answer, Joseph cried again and said, "I'll give you everything you want, just please save my daughter." Achieving his goal, Aiden smiled faintly. He said confidently, "All right, uncle. But you have to remember to keep your word. You have to give me whatever I want." Kurz finally couldn't hold back anymore and laughed mockingly. "Beelzebub said you're the only one whose greed is even greater than his." Aiden didn't care. He glanced behind him at the fleeing person and called out coldly, "You over there." The thug's footsteps immediately halted, his body trembling reflexively. In a blink of an eye, Aiden closed in on him and said coldly, "Yes, you. You think I'd naturally let you go?" He said he had a few questions, but he thought he wouldn't be willing to answer, so let's start with a few hits. And so, screams of terror echoed through the alley. On another note, at the headquarters of the Cerberus gang in the gang leader's office, Ankol looked at the document in front of him, raised an eyebrow smugly and said, "With Joseph's 2 pills, we'll make a fortune. Or maybe I should try one. It's very good for the body." But at this moment, the door suddenly opened. He immediately cursed in dissatisfaction. "Who dares to enter my room without knocking?" However, as soon as he finished speaking, Ankol noticed his subordinate had returned. He immediately asked cheerfully, "Is that you? Did you bring Joseph's medicine? But why is your face so swollen?" Before the other person could answer, another person appeared in the room. Aiden walked in from outside, raised an eyebrow and chuckled, "Peekaboo, I found you." Ankol looked at him doubtfully and asked, "Who are you? How dare you do this to someone in my gang? I don't know what you want, but walking into a tiger's den like this, you're truly a fool." As he spoke, he reached under the table and pressed a button. This was an emergency alarm. As soon as he channeled energy into it, it would sound. Ankol's men would arrive soon. By then, Aiden would be finished. That's what he thought. But life isn't like a dream. Ankol waited for a long time, but no one answered. His face immediately turned grim. Why hasn't anyone come yet? Is the alarm broken? Unable to hold back anymore, he directly shouted for people. Is anyone outside? There's an intruder here. Aiden arrogantly picked his ear, pouted, and said, "Your gang members. When I just arrived, I already put them to a very deep sleep." Just as he said Sabaris's men were all in a beautiful dream, Aiden glared at Ankol and said coldly, "But as for you, I won't let you sleep so easily. Hand over Joseph's daughter." Hearing the name Joseph, Ankol immediately snorted contemptuously. "So you're the mercenary Joseph brought here. Don't be arrogant just because you've eliminated a few brats. Because the strongest person in this gang is me." As soon as he finished speaking, a stream of energy appeared in his hand and struck. In a flash, the room echoed with the sounds of fighting. But everyone probably knew who was fighting. A moment later in the dungeon deep below, Ankol, his face swollen like a pig's head, led Aiden down. His hands trembled as he opened the door. "The girl is here." Aiden looked at the room and cursed in dissatisfaction. "You locked a little girl in here. You're truly bastards." Ankol shook his head slightly, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. He walked and explained, "But that kid, she's not an ordinary child. She may look calm now, but usually—" But before he could finish, a small figure appeared from the room, but the kick was not light at all. The little girl directly kicked Ankol out. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. She said coldly, "I will kill you." Seeing this, Aiden couldn't help but exclaim, "The kid is pretty good," even though he had beaten that guy to a pulp. While he was thinking, Kurz suddenly jumped out and said, "That kid, she's using a rather interesting power." Aiden flinched slightly, then realized the little girl was attacking him. He immediately used his hand to block. He dealt with the little girl while talking to Kurz. "You said it's an interesting power." Kurz nodded slightly and replied, "Yes, the power of a very troublesome person." Aiden frowned upon hearing this. "Whatever, it's not your business. Your goal is to bring the girl back to Joseph." At this moment, Alice roared fiercely again, "Take me back to my father. I want to see my father." Aiden calmly nodded. "Okay, let's go see your father." These words made the little girl's actions pause. Alice muttered in disbelief, "My father. I'll get to see my father." Aiden extended his hand in front of the little girl and smiled. "Joseph, I mean, your father asked me to come and save you. Let's go home." Alice's hands trembled slightly. The little girl still couldn't believe it and asked back, "Will I really get to go home and see my father?" "That's right, let's go." Aiden slowly reassured the little girl. Immediately, Alice hugged his neck tightly. The little girl started to cry loudly. "I was so scared I missed Daddy." Aiden patted the little girl's back comfortingly. "It must have been very scary being here alone, right? You're safe now. Let's go see your father." Seeing this touching scene, Kurz couldn't help but feel contemptuous. "I didn't expect you to still have sympathy inside you," Aiden snorted coldly upon hearing this. "What kind of person do you think I am? Am I that terrible in your eyes?" A moment later, Aiden brought Alice back. As soon as the little girl reached the door, she shouted cheerfully, "Daddy!" Hearing the sound, Joseph immediately turned his head to look. The father and daughter just hugged each other tightly. Because she hadn't seen her father for a long time, Alice kept crying pitifully. Joseph patted the little girl's head comfortingly. "I'm so sorry, my child." Aiden watched the father and daughter from behind, not saying a word. A moment later, after Alice finished crying, she fell asleep. Joseph then came to thank Aiden. "Thank you so much." Aiden waved his hand slightly and chuckled. "It's not over with just a thank you. Now comes the most important part, the part where you repay me, Mr. Client." Seeing his vile smile, Joseph couldn't help but tremble. "Of course, I should pay the fee, right? How much do you want?" Aiden raised an eyebrow and looked at him, asking, "How much do you think your daughter's life is worth?" Joseph hesitated for a moment. After a long silence, he spoke, "To me, she is more precious than my own life." If money was what Aiden wanted, he would spend his whole life working to pay him back. Hearing this, Aden clicked his tongue and exclaimed, I have plenty of that. Do you have anything else? For example, what about your alchemy techniques? As soon as he finished speaking, Joseph's expression immediately darkened. Biting his lip fiercely, he asked back doubtfully, You mean my alchemy? Mac nodded. Aiden calmly admitted, That's right. An alchemist with skills as meticulous as possible is what I need right now. Although Joseph didn't want to, he still said in a deep voice, I understand. So you helped me because you wanted my alchemy skills. But since you helped me, I must repay you. As soon as he finished speaking, he reached out and opened his wooden box, revealing a divine potion. This was something Aiden had seen in his previous life. Joseph explained in a deep voice, This is the top-grade divine potion I made. Try it. I used all my skills to make it. Aiden looked at it drooling. His eyes lit up as he asked, Can I drink it? Joseph nodded slightly and replied, Of course, this is part of my repayment to you. Curse saw his expression and couldn't look anymore. He cursed in dissatisfaction. Dragon Slayer, wipe your drool, it's disgusting. Aiden didn't care. Putting the divine potion in his mouth, he snorted coldly and said, You only say that because you haven't tasted this divine potion. If you drank this divine potion, then… Before he could finish, a powerful surge of energy appeared. They continuously fluctuated in Aiden's body. Feeling this, Aiden's eyes lit up. Just as expected, it was truly top grade. Just by drinking one divine potion, his mana had doubled. Thinking that, Aiden immediately said cheerfully, Excellent beyond compare. Joseph smiled and opened his mouth. Then, as a repayment, I will continue to make these divine potions for you. Aiden raised an eyebrow at him and made an attractive offer. Instead of doing that, why don't you join our ducal house? If you agree, we will protect you and your daughter. Hearing this, the expression on Joseph's face immediately changed. He exclaimed in amazement, The ducal house. Come to think of it, who exactly are you? Smiling involuntarily, Aiden calmly replied, Forgive me for introducing myself so late. I am the eldest son of the Remus family, Aiden Remis. As soon as these words were spoken, Joseph was immediately astonished. Aiden Remus. Could it be? Are you the troll prince the town has been talking about recently? Hearing that title, Aiden's expression immediately turned grim. Again, troll prince again. Kurz also couldn't help but chuckle. It seems you've got a bad reputation. After a moment of shock, Joseph regained his composure. He asked doubtfully, What wind brought a young master of a ducal house to such a shabby place? Aiden said calmly, I have an urgent problem that I need your help with. If you can help me solve this problem, our duke will protect your family for life. That's an attractive offer, isn't it? Joseph nodded slightly and replied, That's right. But what exactly is the problem I need to solve? First, let's talk about that urgent matter. A moment later in Cassie's research room, Aiden had brought Joseph here to examine her. After a long while, he said sternly again, This is the most severe mana circuit syndrome I've ever encountered. If it weren't for the superior strength of the Beastman tribe, she wouldn't have survived this long. Saying that, he looked at the papers pasted on the wall again, frowned, and continued, This disease can definitely be cured if we make medicine according to the method you showed me. But the problem lies in obtaining the necessary ingredients to prepare it. Hearing this, Aiden asked doubtfully again, We'll find and buy those ingredients. Joseph hesitated for a long time before answering. The ingredients containing these things are not real ingredients. There's no way to obtain them. It says here that mana circuit syndrome is a disease where mana circuits freeze. According to this treatment method, they need extremely hot fire attribute mana to thaw the frozen mana circuits, but… Before he could finish, Aiden interrupted. How do we get extremely hot fire attribute mana? Mentioning this, Joseph fell silent. Cassie beside him continued, You can get it from the heart of a fire dragon or the feather of a fire phoenix. But how can we find those legendary creatures? Thank you for your help. You mean something like this? Aiden asked calmly, then took something out from his person. He raised an eyebrow and chuckled, I have one. A feather of a fire phoenix. Cassie and Joseph immediately gaped, looking at the thing in his hand. They exclaimed in disbelief, Why do you have that? How did you get something we've only heard about in legends? Their overreaction startled Aiden a little. He explained in confusion. Did the fire phoenix drop it? Ignoring the reason where he got it from, Joseph hurriedly went over and took the fire. Phoenix's feather nodded and chuckled. This is enough. If we have this, it will definitely work. Give me 2 days. Hearing this, Cassie behind him was somewhat speechless. Her tears had begun to fall partly from emotion, partly from joy. Finally, the terrible disease in her body had a chance to be cured. At this moment, someone suddenly knocked on the door from outside. Philip's voice also rang out. "Young Master Aiden, are you here?" Aiden reflexively frowned and asked, "Philip, what's wrong?" Philip hurriedly replied, "Duke Fred is looking for you." Hearing this, Aiden couldn't help but tremble. He forgot. This time he disappeared without saying a word. Immediately after Aiden went to Fred's office, Fred narrowed his eyes and looked at him, asking, "I heard you went to Myclan City this time." "Yes, I went there for some business." Aiden nodded slightly and said this. "I'm sorry, I should have informed you before I left." But Fred shook his head and chuckled. "I didn't call you here to scold you." Aiden couldn't help but be startled. "Then why did you call me here?" Unable to figure it out, he directly asked, "So why did you call me here, Father?" Fred took out an invitation card and explained, "We received an invitation to a banquet celebrating the upcoming birthday of the Crown Prince. This time, I want you to attend the banquet with me." Hearing this, a look of panic appeared on Aiden's face. "So much work at home, who has time to go?" He immediately asked, "I'm attending the banquet. Isn't Cars usually the one representing our family at such events?" Mac nodded. Fred calmly said, "That's right, but he declined to participate this time because he has to take care of matters at the nightly order. Besides, many people want to meet you. But I'm also very busy." Aiden sighed helplessly. But at this moment he remembered something. He hurriedly asked, "Father, is this year 450 according to the imperial calendar, right?" Fred nodded slightly and said, "That's right, son. No matter how much you dislike it, you still have to attend this banquet." Aiden thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. "All right, I'll go." Fred was a little slow to adapt to his rapid change. He hurriedly explained, "I'm busy, so I probably have no other choice. I'll go. Just consider it as making an appearance." Hearing this, Fred nodded and chuckled. "I understand. You've made a wise decision. Be careful." The father and son talked a little more. Aiden then quickly left Fred's room. Kurz then jumped out and asked, "You wouldn't go to a place like that without a reason. Suddenly agreeing to attend the banquet, what's your real motive?" Aiden slowly explained, "A major event will take place at this year's banquet. The Dark Mages will attack while the banquet is in progress. And the one directing everything is the Queen of the Dark Mages, the Silver Witch." Aiden was planning to bring that woman to his side. Hearing this, Kurz asked doubtfully, "Why are you trying to ally with someone you hate?" Aiden shook his head slightly and replied, "Unlike the chaotic extremist, heretical dark mage group, she is the leader of a moderate faction, the Flame of Florence. Although Aiden killed her in his previous life, perhaps the outcome this time will be different. In his previous life, the last time they met was on the battlefield." Before closing her eyes, the Silver Witch left a sentence for Aiden. "Mercenary Aiden, perhaps. If we had met in a different way, we would have been quite close." Aiden felt quite regretful. Previously, he couldn't dispel the corrupting dark magic. He couldn't repeat Florence's will. A few days later, the entourage from Count Remis's mansion set off to attend the Crown Prince's banquet. Aiden sat in the carriage and said dejectedly, "Do we need such a large entourage just to go to the royal palace for a birthday party?" Lou sat beside him and chuckled happily. "The size of the entourage represents the power of a family. So this is unavoidable because of the Duke's reputation. But why do we have to take a detour?" Aiden pouted and explained, "I just want to take a more comfortable road." That's what he said. He wanted to get a few more of Joseph's top-grade divine potions. But there was a problem. Joseph had said before he left that even if he wanted to make a top-grade divine potion right now, he couldn't. Because it requires the tears of tree people, which are produced by tree spirits, but they are endangered. Aiden had never seen tree people before, so he didn't know much about them. but that guy will definitely know. He'll go get that gift first. Thinking of this, Aiden immediately smirked. A moment later, as the carriage passed through a forest, Auden quickly gave an order. Everyone go ahead. I have to stop here for a moment. Lou wanted to accompany and escort him, but he was doused with cold water by him. You're even weaker than me. I'll go alone. And so Aiden entered the forest alone. Kurz then jumped out and asked, Are you sure there's someone you need to meet in the middle of these hills? Aiden smirked and said, I never said it was a person. It's here. Even now, I still don't understand my master's thoughts. The two of them walked and talked, finally stopping in front of a strange heart-shaped rock. Kurz couldn't help but say, somehow this heart-shaped rock looks truly artificial. His master once said, this is a gift for any disciple who comes to this place. He truly has unique taste. Kurz asked in some surprise, You mean this stone is that gift? It looks no different from an ordinary stone. Aiden chuckled calmly and said, My master really likes to carefully wrap everything. This time, you'll still be the one receiving it. As soon as he finished speaking, he picked up his sword and without hesitation slashed down, cutting the heart in front of him in half. Seeing the rock split in two, Kurz asked in some surprise, Didn't you just say that was a gift from your master? Smiling involuntarily, Aiden calmly explained, This is just wrapping paper. Saying that, he stepped into the cellar behind the rock. Only then did Kurz nod in understanding. It's a dungeon, so this is the gift, Mac nodded. Aiden calmly replied. He always rambled that if you want to become the king of mercenaries, you have to learn by experiencing pain, or you'll only become stronger if you experience the brink of death. Besides, this dungeon isn't really a dungeon. Inside the dungeon, many monsters were slowly moving towards the light. Aiden stood there calmly, not retreating an inch. Kurz asked curiously again, Perhaps in your previous life, you and your master got along very well. He pouted and said, In my previous life, I thought he was going to kill me here. But in this life, Aiden felt very grateful. In front of him now was a horde of monsters. Behind them was a monster holding a scepter, probably the leader. Kurz said contemptuously, It's a lich, a foolish entity created when a dark mage transforms into an undead. They are the toughest ones if Aiden doesn't know how to deal with them. In his previous life, he struggled with them. At this moment, the lich leader spoke in a demonic voice. Foolish human, you dare to step in here without fear. I will turn you into an undead like these. Aiden was too lazy to care about it. He rushed straight forward and swept his sword horizontally. If he defeated this lich, those undead would all disappear. Besides, compared to the high-level liches he had killed in his previous life, this one was nothing. Aiden's speed was extremely fast. The lich didn't even have time to react before it was slashed by him. Before disappearing, the lich said unwillingly, I didn't think I would depart before witnessing the rebirth of the Dark Mage Kingdom. And immediately after it and the monsters it created turned to dust, merging with the air. Inside those wisps of smoke, Aiden's eyes noticed something glowing. A strange necklace appeared on the ground. Kurz jumped out and speculated, Is this pendant the gift your master mentioned? Aiden shook his head slightly in denial. This was something he had never seen before, but the pattern looked strangely familiar. He decided to pick it up and keep it for now. At this moment, Kurz suddenly suggested, Dragon Slayer, you should also collect the lich's ashes. Startled, Aiden asked doubtfully, Collect its ashes for what? Kurz calmly explained, Didn't you say you were going to find the tree people? Lich ashes are what the tree people desperately want. Hearing this, Aiden hesitated a little but finally bent down to collect the ashes. He didn't want to listen to that damn guy, but he also didn't know much about tree people. Then while doing it, he threatened Kurz. Kurz pouted and said, But hey, where's the gift you mentioned? Aiden didn't answer and continued to collect the ashes. Seeing this, he asked doubtfully again, You were still skeptical just now. Why are you collecting so many things now? A moment later, Aiden, with a bag full of ashes, walked towards another door. Inside, there was a hidden room. Kurz saw it and was amazed. Aiden slowly explained, It's exactly a hidden dungeon. Even though our master is a bit strange, he wouldn't throw us into a dungeon with only liches. Hearing this, Kurz pouted contemptuously. Having a lich is already a bit strange. Aiden glared at him angrily. The two of them bickered like cats and dogs, but Aiden still moved forward. He only stopped when he saw something glowing. Kurz was so amazed he was speechless. Aiden smiled faintly. You also saw it in your previous life, right? Kurz's tone was a little dissatisfied. How could I forget? If it weren't for that thing, I wouldn't have lost our battle. In front of them now was a shield. This was the Benzi spirit shield, an equipment imbued with the madness of a Benzi soul. It had been a long time since Aiden had seen it. He quickly took it into his hand. That madness had once tainted even its users, so he had struggled quite a bit with it in the past. But this was the second time. And one of the things Aiden liked about this shield was that it could transform into a bracelet to wear, unlike other equipment. At this moment, the shield suddenly transformed into a vortex coiling around Aiden's arm. Before long, it had transformed into a bracelet. He could take it anywhere, which was quite convenient. Perhaps because it was familiar equipment, it reminded Aiden of his time as a dragon slayer. He even remembered this crazed shout. Reading this thought, Kurz immediately mocked, like master, like disciple. I guess you're not normal either. Aiden was too lazy to pay attention to him. He looked into the void and shouted, I know you're witnessing everything. Show yourself quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, a rabbit appeared in front of him. It made a mocking sound. I've been waiting for you to call me, you bastard. Ah, no, dear client. It seems you need to make a deal. It introduced itself as Rabbi's, a merchant spirit from the friendly spirit shop. If he needed anything, just say it. Potions, weapons, there was nothing its spirit shop didn't have. Merchant spirits, spirits who trade with a great desire for money. The spirit shop is where these merchant spirits gather. The merchant hats on their heads are their trademark feature. Normally, when a dungeon is open, that shop will send a spirit to trade for the auxiliary items in that dungeon, but Aden was not an ordinary person. At this moment, Rabbi smiled smugly and said, Are you planning to trade the Benzi shield in your right hand? I can buy it at a good price. No, I'm not selling it. Aiden, without hesitation, bluntly refused, making Rabbi's eyes widen in surprise. You're not selling it? Then what deal do you want to make? Aiden calmly said, I want some information. I want to know the location where the tree people reside in the western lands. Hearing this, Rabbi smirked. It said contemptuously, So you want to buy information where the tree people reside, huh? But client, information about tree people will be very expensive. Even for just one small village location, it will cost 2,000 gold, discount included. Not only did Aiden not object, he even increased the price. No 4,000 gold. 4,000 gold. What? Hearing this number, Rabbi's eyes immediately lit up. Kurz was also puzzled by his action and asked doubtfully, Why did you suddenly double the price? Do you owe this guy something from your previous life? Aiden shook his head and chuckled, I don't owe him anything. I'm just doing what I was taught. Hearing this, he became even more confused. Taught? What exactly were you taught? Aiden smirked extremely vilely. The skill to squeeze merchant spirits dry that my master taught me, he said. He then gestured with his chin at Rabbi's and said, Give me the location of the tree people's residence and 4,000 gold quickly. Hearing this, Rabbi's asked in dissatisfaction, Didn't you buy them for 4,000 gold, and now you're demanding them and 4,000 gold? Have you lost your mind from fighting monsters? Aiden clicked his tongue and chuckled. No, I'm making a deal. I want to sell you what's behind me. Okay? In just a blink of an eye, Rabbi's face changed color. It exclaimed in panic, How can a human like you, given an inch you take a mile? Aiden drew his sword and chuckled vilely. If you don't want it, just say so. I can destroy it right now. Seeing it didn't answer, Aiden urged loudly, Hurry up. Rabbi still stood there motionlessly, unable to utter a word. It couldn't have imagined that a mortal like him would know about the dungeon core. All the others don't even know about it. If it tells its seniors now that it bought a dungeon core with money, they'll scold it. But if it couldn't retrieve it, it would be fired. It still hesitated. Aiden decided to make a big bet. He aggressively carried his sword towards the back. All right, let's break it. Seeing this, rabbis immediately panicked and shouted, Wait, wait a minute, I'll buy it. I said I'll buy it. Aiden smiled contentedly. You should have said so earlier. Having reached an agreement, rabbis took out a bag of gold coins and gave it to Aiden. He smirked and said, These platinum coins are definitely worth 4,000 gold. It was a pleasure doing business with you, Rabbit. See you later if anything comes up. Saying that, he turned and left. Rabbis watched Aiden's retreating figure crying without tears. I hope we never meet again. This shameless scoundrel. You think you can just walk away after deceiving a spirit merchant? Just try to find the Tree People's village. No mortal can return from that place. Thinking of this, rabbis was extremely expectant. On this side, Aiden, unaware of its intentions, happily carried the bag of money and went out. Lou outside was leaning against the carriage, his expression extremely worried. Aiden had been gone for half a day. He didn't know if he should go look for him. At this moment, Lou saw Aiden coming out from inside. He called out happily, Young master, seeing you gone for so long, I was very worried. Hearing this, Aiden couldn't help but interrupt. Stop right there. It's a bit creepy. Sometimes he wished he would treat him like before. This was too scary. He couldn't get used to it. He was a straight guy. Thinking that, Aiden turned his head to look at everyone and suggested, Anyway, has everyone rested enough? We'll head to the Imperial capital right away. That night, at the entrance to the Bensi Soul dungeon, a figure in a black cloak slowly walked in. The other person's low voice also rang out, I finally found it. But why is no one here? Looking at the surrounding scenery, the other person sighed in dissatisfaction. The thing she intended to take is gone. It should have been here, right? Why is that? The next day at the capital of the empire, Aiden's group finally arrived. The carriage stopped in front of the city gate. Aiden stepped down from the carriage like a movie star. People of the empire were different. As soon as he got down, someone came to greet him. He bowed respectfully and greeted, Welcome, young master, to the imperial capital. I will take you to the guest room of the royal palace. Outwardly, yes, but inwardly he was extremely contemptuous. He thought cars would come, but instead it was this vagrant. Aiden's notoriety reached even this capital. He must not be ordinary. So he decided he absolutely must not make him angry. With this thought, the servant dared not delay and led Aiden to his resting place. As soon as he arrived, he jumped onto the soft bed. Feeling this, he immediately exclaimed, Even the bed in the guest room of the palace is completely different. But very quickly, Aiden noticed another problem. Tonight, the dark mages would wreak havoc. Last time, many people died and were injured. At this moment, Kerr suddenly jumped out and asked, Then why don't you go warn them? Aiden smirked. This is a good opportunity. I can't let it slip away so easily. Kerr asked doubtfully again. So, you mean you don't care if someone gets injured or dies? Aiden chuckled and replied, Do you think I'm Lowy? I was the hero who saved the world in my previous life. I already have a plan. A night passed just like that. The next morning, the banquet officially began. Laughter and chatter echoed incessantly. It's just that as soon as Aiden appeared in this place, the atmosphere immediately fell silent. No one spoke. It was clear that everyone knew his reputation. Aiden ignored the gossip around him and just walked straight ahead. It had been a while since he was treated like this. He guessed all humans were like that. Whether they were mercenaries or nobles, Aiden had no reason to get involved with them. There were 3 people I need to meet. At the same time, in a corner of the palace, a man was silently standing in this place enjoying the banquet. He said with a satisfied smile, The taste of the wine at the royal palace is truly the best. If only I could import this wine to the magic tower in my country. Just then, Aiden approached and greeted Mage Gustav Dora. It's an honor to meet you. This person was the chief mage of Anguis. Gustav flinched slightly, asking suspiciously, You know me? Smiling involuntarily, Aiden said cheerfully, Of course. Aren't you a mage from the magic tower of Anguis? Speaking of Anguis, you're the one in charge. Hearing this, Gustav immediately turned his head away and said indifferently, If you're trying to get into the good graces of that magic tower nation, then you've come to the wrong person. I don't have a good relationship with the higher-ups at the magic tower. Aiden ignored his refusal and said calmly, "I've read the book you wrote, Gustav. The potential of applied magic engineering, I find it quite interesting." These words startled Gustav and his eyes began to focus on him. He asked with a trembling voice, "You've read that book? You find it interesting?" Aiden nodded slightly and replied, "I couldn't help but be surprised by the presentation of a method I've never seen before." At this moment, Gustav suddenly placed his hand on Aiden's shoulder. He laughed heartily, realizing the greatness of magic engineering. "Unlike those fools in the Magic Tower Empire, you have that excellent understanding, young Master Aiden." Faced with Gustav's enthusiasm, Aiden just smiled wryly. "I've never seen such a useful and wonderful field before." He said that, but in reality, he had rolled over and slept every time he read it. Ignoring the reluctance on Aiden's face, Gustav rambled on about incomprehensible theories, to the point where Curse couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up, "Dragon Slayer, please shut his mouth." Aiden was also very reluctant. "Just pretend you don't have ears." Curse could only listen to Gustav's ramblings while talking to Aiden on the side. "Why do we need someone so obsessed with magic engineering? It's not even in the hierarchy of magic." Aiden slowly explained, "Right now, magic engineering might be considered useless, but in the future, it will become an indispensable technology for everyone." Hearing this, Curse said clearly, "Then this Gustav guy must be famous in a different way." Aiden didn't want to but had to admit, he's really famous. Gustav caused a terrible accident unprecedented in history and was called the mad terrorist of the Magic Tower, Gustav Dora. Curse frowned and asked, "Terrorist? Isn't he famous for Magic Tower engineering?" Aiden continued, "Perhaps he'll soon cause an accident during an experiment, and then his mana will be sealed and he'll be expelled from the Magic Tower nation. Then Gustav will attack the Magic Tower with the technique he created alone. That's how this person almost destroyed the entire Magic Tower nation. Of course, he was stopped by the Magic Tower nation, which also had the great mage Sora. Anyway, thanks to the history of almost destroying the entire magic nation, magic engineering has been recognized. Isn't that strange?" Aiden ignored Gustav laughing beside him. He just treated it as him talking nonsense. But Gustav's interest didn't wane at all. He kept talking. "This is the first time I've had such a deep conversation about magic engineering. I don't know if I'm a bit too excited and talking too much." Although Aiden didn't really want to, he still shook his head and said with a smile, "Not at all. The conversation just now enlightened me a lot. I hope we can have a deeper conversation next time we meet." At this moment, a loud shout suddenly cut off their conversation. "Aiden Remus." Aiden flinched slightly and looked at the newcomer. "Who called you? Your dog face is here." "Oh no, but who is it?" This face looked very familiar, but Aiden couldn't remember it at all. At this moment, the young man shouted aggressively, "You thief! You dare to take the heirloom of our Cetus family! I won't forgive you." Aiden looked at the other person in a daze. Gustav, who was beside him, spoke first. "Has something happened between you and young Master Tien?" He shook his head indifferently. "No, this is the first time I've met him." Just as he said that, Aiden suddenly remembered something. That's right, the other person just mentioned the Cetus family. Thinking carefully, he realized this person looked like Tyrith. No wonder he looked so familiar. It turned out to be the young master of the Cetus family, Tyrith's son, Tion Cetus. Thinking this, Auden smiled politely and said, "Young Master Tion, it's an honor to meet you. I wondered if I had met you before, and now I realize you look just like your father." But before he could finish, Tion aggressively cut him off. "Shut up, you swindler! How dare you deceive my father and steal our family heirloom?" Hearing this, the surrounding crowd immediately paid attention and started whispering. After seeing the Bias Bap hanging by his side, the crowd sneered disdainfully. So he didn't defeat that dog himself. Aiden heard the surrounding whispers and couldn't help but sigh helplessly. "It seems there's a misunderstanding. I won this thing in a completely fair bet." Tian shouted unconvinced. "I've heard a lot about your troublemaking lately. Do you think I'll believe someone like you could withstand my father's swordplay and win a bet?" Aiden started to get angry. "What kind of person are you? What about you?" Unable to hold back, he directly retorted, "Young Master Tion, you've gone too far. Even Curse was very surprised. He actually knows how to be patient. Tyan on the opposite side didn't back down either, snorting coldly, "Gone too far, then prove you're not a fraud." He said if Aiden beat him in a sword fight, he would kneel and apologize. In return, Aiden had to return the heirloom and kneel to apologize to him. Aiden cursed inwardly. I have a feeling he's getting more and more aggressive. Anyway, he's just as stubborn as his father. Thinking this, he hesitated and said, "A sword fight right at the Crown Prince's birthday banquet. If the Crown Prince finds out about this." Before he could finish, a low voice cut him off. "How amusing. A sword fight right at my birthday party." Aiden and Tian both flinched and glanced over. They saw a young man approaching. It was Mars, the Crown Prince of this kingdom. Everyone dared not be disrespectful and hurriedly bowed respectfully to him. Tian also looked at the newcomer with some surprise. He didn't dare to delay, bowing his head in greeting, "Welcome the succeeding son of the Empire." In reality, he felt this crown prince had arrived at a very inopportune moment. Mars smiled at him and said, "I heard a very interesting conversation." Tian replied in a low voice, "Please forgive us, Your Highness. We are willing to accept any punishment for this disturbance." Aiden, on the other hand, felt rather regretful. Luckily, His Highness the Crown Prince saved Qian, that idiot. Thinking this, he also respectfully opened his mouth. "I apologize." Smiling involuntarily, Ma calmly suggested, "No need to apologize. Raise your heads." However, his next sentence was not polite at all. "By the way, young Master Tian, young Master Aiden, I wish to see your sword fight. Can you duel right here?" These words caught them both off guard. Does this crown prince live by the sea? He sure meddles in a lot of things. Seeing their reactions, Mars smiled again and said, "You both have proud achievements and martial arts skills. If you two demonstrate your skills for me, it will be the best birthday present I could ever ask for." His words reminded Aiden of something. This guy was also very famous in his previous life. Mars was the most promising candidate for the position of emperor, but he had a bad habit. He was a battle maniac. He couldn't refuse the crown prince's request. What should he do? While Aiden was hesitating, Tian on this side had already agreed. "It's an honor. I obey your command, Your Highness the Crown Prince." The reason he agreed was because of Tyrith, who had never acknowledged him but acknowledged Aiden. He would expose Aiden's true face, retrieve the family heirloom, and restore his father's honor. Thinking this, Tian glanced at the trembling Auden beside him, sneering, "Where's your previous confidence? Now you're trembling like a pathetic coward. You've brought shame to the family." Even Curse was a little worried. He asked suspiciously, "Hey, Dragon Slayer, are you sure you're okay?" However, not long after, Aiden smiled slyly and opened his mouth. "Your Royal Highness, esteemed Crown Prince. I'm not very fond of fighting, but since it's your command, how can I refuse?" Curse silently mourned for Tian for 5 minutes. Thus, at Mars's request, Aiden and Tian prepared to enter the battle. Mars sat on the chair smiling cheerfully and said, "For safety, the use of sword aura and auxiliary tools is prohibited. I'm really looking forward to seeing a match where you both give it your all." Tian nodded respectfully and replied, "I promise this will be a sword fight worth watching, Your Highness." Then he turned to Aiden and confidently opened his mouth. "I will prove right here that all the rumors about you are meaningless." Hearing this, Aiden pouted contemptuously. Can we start now?" This attitude angered Tian. He pursed his lips and cursed, "You brat, your mouth is really annoying." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward with his sword like a gust of wind. Seeing Aiden still standing there, Tian sneered, "This amateur warrior defeated my father. How ridiculous. This match will end quickly and boringly here. But it's not yet clear which cat will bite which mouse." Before Tian's sword could touch Aiden, he was hit on the forehead with a painful thud. Seeing this scene, Mars couldn't help but smile with great interest. At the same time, another young man watching the match felt a bit awkward. Tian lost too easily. Surprisingly, Aiden didn't want it to end like that. He put on a hesitant expression and said, "I was so surprised that my hand slipped. Coincidentally, you were right there. I'm so lucky." Then he looked at Mars and suggested, It's really hard to judge someone's skill based on a mistake both sides accidentally made. Let's consider this round invalid. Mars agreed without hesitation. Very well, let this match be invalid. Both of you need to focus more. Biting his lip fiercely, Tian gritted his teeth and said, "As you command, your highness." He thought he had let his guard down. Even with a rogue like Aiden in the end, a knight is still a knight. He still knows how to use a sword. But why did he put on that hideous face? Thinking this, Tian's eyes became determined. He pursed his lips and said, "This time, I'll give it my all, young master, Aiden." Nodding indifferently, Aiden, lacking a beating, provoked, Of course. Come and hit me. Get out of my sight. Anything is fine." These words made Tian furious. He tried to calm himself down and not pay attention to his taunts, but he still couldn't help but tremble with anger. Immediately after, Tian rushed forward with his sword. It's just that his speed was too slow. Aiden easily dodged by simply moving aside. Adan frowned at his sword strike, sighing inwardly. Just as expected of the Count's son, his swordsmanship is straightforward and upright just like him. However, the weakness is too obvious. Thinking this, Aiden raised his sword and successfully parried. He said coldly, "Compared to the Count, your swordsmanship is too weak." These words directly angered Tian. He gritted his teeth and cursed. "What did you say? My swordsmanship is weak." Aiden snorted lightly and said coldly, "The Count's strikes are very powerful and precise, but young Master Tian, your current swordsmanship looks like you're imitating the Count's." Tian pursed his lips aggressively. "You dare say he's imitating?" Aiden pouted and said, "The swordsmanship that defeated your father, the thing you've always been curious about, I'll show you." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand began to dance in the air. Aiden's speed was so fast that Tian couldn't keep up. He bit his lip aggressively, seemingly unable to block it. Thinking that his father had lost to such swordsmanship, Tian felt a bit ridiculous. But at this moment, the tip of Aiden's sword suddenly bent, dodging Tian's sword, causing him to widen his eyes in horror. In just a moment, the tip of Aiden's sword successfully pierced Tian's face, and fresh blood began to flow. Seeing this, Curse couldn't help but speak up. "I thought you'd go easy, but it seems you're more serious than I thought," Aiden said calmly. "If I don't knock him unconscious, I bet he'll keep attacking until he's dead." Hearing this, Auden had pushed Tian down. He didn't expect to lose to an unknown sword technique. He was unwilling and stood up again. Aiden couldn't help but chuckle. He actually blocked it. While he was thinking, Tian rushed forward with fierce momentum, shouting, "I am Tian Cetus, the eldest son destined to lead the Cetus family." Unfortunately, in Aiden's eyes, he was just like a newbie learning to sword fight. He directly used the mercenary king's swordsmanship, the knight's sure kill technique. In just a few seconds, Tian's sword was knocked away and his entire body fell powerlessly. Fortunately, someone caught him in time. The other person spoke sternly, "It seems my friend has caused a lot of trouble in my absence." "It's okay, I feel a bit unnatural anyway," Aiden said calmly. But when he looked at the other person, he was startled. Then he sighed in relief. So he didn't have to go through the trouble of finding him, because the other person was one of the 3 people he came here to meet. While Aiden was thinking, the other person spoke again. "It's a pleasure to meet you, young Master Aiden. This person is Jinbeda's younger brother Dias. The Duchy of Seas of the Grand Duke Seas, known as the strongest knight family. And there's a saying that no one who inherits their bloodline doesn't become a master swordsman." Aiden looked down from above. Dyer was skillfully receiving guests. He couldn't help but sigh. If he had been reincarnated into that family, he would probably be a master swordsman by now. That guy is called the genius of this family. At this moment, Curse spoke up again. "This is the first time I've heard of this guy." "Well then, if you want to meet him, isn't now the best opportunity?" Aiden heard this and shook his head in refusal. "A better opportunity will come." But before he could finish, he suddenly felt an intense gaze coming from behind. What was it? Aiden hurriedly turned his head to look and saw a group of people surrounding him, eagerly introducing their daughters. The calls of young master buzzed in Aiden's ears, making him want to go crazy. He hurriedly ran to another place. The air around Aiden finally became quiet. He sighed helplessly. They won't chase me all the way here, will they? Curse jumped out again and said with a laugh, Dragon Slayer, don't you see how dirty those nobles are? Just a moment ago, they were looking down on you. Aiden shook his head slightly. What's there to care about? People are all the same. They cling to you when you succeed and discard you when you're no longer useful. Don't trust me too much, I'm human after all. I believe you, Curse suddenly said. But Aiden couldn't bear such emotion and felt a little uncomfortable. Curse slowly spoke. You're more like an ox than a human, so my trust in you is 100%. From touched to chilled in an instant, Aiden cursed in dissatisfaction. You're dead meat. When I get home, I'll drink 100 vials of divine medicine. While the two were silently sizing each other up, a melodious voice suddenly rang out. The swordsmanship you just used belongs to the mercenary king, doesn't it? These words startled Aiden. She recognized his master's swordsmanship. More importantly, Aiden recognized this energy. As expected, she would come to his door herself, the person he needed to meet in the end. Thinking this, Auden didn't turn around and said calmly, Have you seen this swordsmanship before? The girl shook her head slightly and said with a smile, No, I've never seen it, but I've heard of it. The mercenary king's swordsmanship can render all defenses useless. If he were a knight, he would surely have many achievements. Hearing this, Aiden couldn't help but curse inwardly. Him a knight, he'd tell you to throw that title to the dogs if it didn't bring him money. But Aiden didn't say it out loud. He calmly smiled and replied, That's right, but isn't this party a bit boring? I hate formal events like this. No matter how much the person in front of him changed her appearance, how could Aiden forget her presence after fighting her hundreds of times? He stared intently at the person beside him, then after a long while, he sneered. Isn't that right, Nista Florence? In the blink of an eye, the atmosphere here felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar so cold it made people afraid. Feeling that she couldn't hide it anymore, Nista returned to her original form, snorted coldly, and said, You already knew. Then let me ask you a question. She asked how Aiden awakened the sword by his side. Aiden knew Nista would come when he saw Bius Bap, but he'd be crazy to say it. He smiled wryly and explained, I got help from a friend. It's just that Nista had seen through his trick. She snorted coldly and said, Intentionally avoiding it, huh? Immediately she unleashed her own aura, which couldn't help but startle Aiden. At this moment, Nista spoke coldly again. I'll ask you again. Where does the demonic energy in you come from? Aiden bit his lip fiercely. As expected, it's a dense and deadly source of mana. She actually sensed the energy of the Lord of Hell. They would probably discuss it later. Although they had put knives to each other's throats in their previous lives, let's try something different this time. Thinking this, Aden slowly spoke, I'm on your side. Nista narrowed her eyes at him and asked coldly, My side, as if you know anything about me. Smiling involuntarily, Aiden raised an eyebrow and said, with a smile, Leader of the Black Mage Guild, the Flame of Florines, the Silver Witch. The last bloodline of the Black Mage Kingdom, the Kingdom of Florence, the mastermind of the White Moon Intelligence Guild. Is that enough? The expression on Nista's face immediately stiffened. Her energy also dropped sharply. She bit her lip aggressively. How do you know so much? Aiden smiled sincerely and replied, We don't have much time. Something is about to happen. Nista was not satisfied with this answer. She said sternly, Stop avoiding it and answer me. But at this moment, a magic circle suddenly appeared in the courtyard. Nista's face immediately turned fearful. She gripped the railing tightly, pursed her lips, and said, Dark magic used to summon the undead. I didn't expect them to make such a big deal out of things. Aiden smiled calmly and said, These guys always follow a common pattern. You seem to have a lot of questions for me, but let's deal with this first. Without waiting for her reply, Aiden continued, You came here to capture the chaotic heretical Black Mage group, right? These words surprised Nista even more. He even knew she came here to capture the chaos. Who is this guy? After a long silence, she said coldly, We'll continue this conversation another time. As soon as she finished speaking, Nista's figure disappeared without a trace. Aiden wasn't too surprised either. He stood there calmly. He would let Nista handle that side. Now it was time to handle this side. Right at this moment, a series of zombies rose from the magic circle. Inside the banquet hall, knights had appeared to stop the zombies. Even Tion joined this battle. After all, he was a swordsman. He could easily kill zombies. Tion glanced at the crowd and said, "Don't be afraid, they're just weak zombies." Upstairs, Aiden was still standing there. Curse jumped out and said, "Even that young count has advanced sword aura, huh?" Aiden replied calmly, "Reaching the advanced sword aura level means he's very strong. It's just that he chose the wrong opponent just now." Contrary to his leisurely demeanor, it was chaotic downstairs, no different from an afternoon market because a giant zombie had appeared. Tian's expression immediately became solemn. "This is too dangerous. We have to wait for reinforcements." Just then, a figure suddenly flashed by. This shocked Tian. The one who acted was Dare. He rushed straight forward. Seeing this, Curse couldn't help but sigh. "That Dare guy seems to be about to reach the Master Swordsman level, right?" Aiden nodded slightly in agreement. "You're right. He's on the verge of becoming a semi-master. Tian is very strong, but with friends and opponents like Dare, he's really unlucky." At this moment, Curse suddenly asked curiously, "But why aren't you helping them and just lazing around here?" Aiden pouted and replied, "They can handle it themselves. Besides, there's something I need to confirm." Curse asked, suspiciously. "Something you need to confirm?" Down below, amidst the mindless zombies, a zombie wearing iron armor suddenly appeared. Tian had sensed his presence. He hurriedly shouted, "I sense a great demonic energy somewhere." In the chaotic battle, the zombie in iron armor slowly approached. His eyes were bloodshot and he kept muttering Dair's name. As soon as he confirmed Dair's position, he immediately gripped the sword in his hand. His left foot stepped back to gain momentum. A whooshing sound appeared, and the zombie's figure shot forward like lightning. Dare sensed the killing intent coming at him, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. By the time he realized the direction, it was too late. The zombie was already rushing at him with a knife. Seeing the large figure getting closer and closer, Dair's face changed color, but his body felt like it was weighed down by lead, unable to move at all. At this moment, Aiden appeared in time using his shield to block in front of him. He bit his lip aggressively, staring intently at the zombie in front of him. Finally, the party crasher has arrived. He is the strongest zombie, the Death Knight. Aiden had seen something was wrong, and indeed, even though it was the strongest zombie, but with Dare being a semi-master, he could still handle it. Aiden had always wondered why Dare lost in his previous life. But this guy had enhanced his power with dark magic to surpass even a master. Aiden also wouldn't have been able to block its attack without Benzie's spirit shield. Now he understood why Dare lost. At this moment, Aiden heard the Death Knight muttering something again. He instinctively frowned. What is this guy saying? While he was confused, the Death Knight swung his sword again, growling each word. "I don't need other insects." At this moment, Aiden finally realized the problem. He should have realized it from the beginning. He should have realized the zombies weren't advancing to attack, but to separate the knights from Dare. Therefore, everything was arranged to kill Dare.